Chapter 1172. How could Hong Tai-long admit to such a heavy crime? He shook his head and denied it, saying that Yu Qianzhou had wrongly accused him. In the end, Yu Qianzhou threw out a sentence and Hong Tai-long immediately admitted defeat. Fine. You don't want to admit it? I'll go argue with Coiling Dragon God and ask him to clarify this matter with you. Yu Qianzhou turned around and was about to leave. Hong Tai-long panicked on the spot. He grabbed his shoulder and turned around, smiling apologetically. We can talk about it slowly. There's no need to trouble old ancestor. Some things have happened too long ago, I might have remembered it wrongly. Let me think about it. Yu Qianzhou sneered and asked coldly, Then did you remember anything? Hong Tai-long revealed a look of contemplation and said slowly, Now that you've reminded me, I do remember something. There seem to be two ways to return to the divine realm. I heard that old ancestor Coiling Dragon opened up a space in the Netherworld, which is the Netherworld Divine Manor. There's a secret passage that leads to the Divine Realm, directly to the Dragon Clan's Divine Dragon Mountain in the Divine Realm. Only people of my Dragon Clan can find it. Also, when the Netherworld River Black Carp of the Netherworld River Aquatic Race successfully leaps through the Dragon's Gate, our Dragon Clan will send a Pegasus carriage down to the Divine Realm. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Putting aside the passage to the Divine Realm in the Netherworld Divine Manor, he had personally experienced the Black Carp leaping through the Dragon's Gate and the Pegasus carriage. He had even sat on the Pegasus carriage, but he never dreamed that it led to the Divine Realm. If he had known earlier, he would have gone to the Divine Realm to take a look. After feeling regretful, he came back to his senses and asked again, That's it? Tell me honestly how much of what you said before was false. Squeeze it dry and say it again. Otherwise you'll have to explain to Coiling Dragon God yourself. Hong Tai-long immediately begged on the verge of tears, Everything else I've said is the truth. Just like what you've said, I'm afraid that I won't be able to answer to the old ancestor, so I discussed with Yi Tiankong and purposely got trapped here so that I can answer when I'm found. Otherwise, do you think I like being trapped here? Even if Patriarch Coiling Dragon were to interrogate him directly, the result would still be the same. In that case, let Patriarch Coiling Dragon come and interrogate him face to face. Yu Qianzhou smirked as he flew along the green flames spewing out from the green lotus. Hong Tai-long was dumbfounded on the spot. Then he started pounding his chest and stamping his feet in apprehension. He looked as if he was regretting that a disaster was about to befall him. Suddenly he raised his head and saw Yu Qianzhou flashing back. He was stunned. Yu Qianzhou looked at him for a while, then frowned and said in a deep voice, After thinking about it, I still feel that I should give you a chance to redeem yourself. Besides, it's not easy to meet the Coiling Dragon God. I wonder if you're willing to cherish this opportunity? The reason why he had left earlier was actually to trick Hong Tai-long. Reality proved that Hong Tai-long really did not hide anything. Otherwise he would have definitely called out to him. Thus he had turned back. Hong Tai-long wasn't really an idiot. He more or less saw through his intentions. He immediately smiled bitterly and said, Of course I'm willing. I wonder how I can redeem myself? Yu Qianzhou looked at him with an awe-inspiring gaze. His expression suddenly turned solemn as he said word by word, Complete your unfinished mission and help me mete out punishment on behalf of the heavens. After that, other than yourself, no one will mention the matter of you colluding with Yi Tiankong. He wanted him to work for him. Hong Tai-long cupped his fists and said with a bitter expression, I dare not to obey. I hope you remember your words. I'll help you get out of trouble right now. Yu Qianzhou didn't have the time to continue arguing with him. He directly dived into the boiling lava. Hong Tai-long was stunned for a moment before he also jumped in. The bare-bottomed child silently sat on the green lotus and looked at the surging lava river. No one knew what he had understood or what he had thought of. At the bottom of the surging lava river that was several hundred meters deep, there was a space shrouded in purple mist. Within it, there was a transparent purple crystal that was the size of a small hill. 2 golden chains were pressed underneath it. Yu Qianzhou extended his palm to sense it. He was instantly shocked. So this entire purple crystal was actually condensed from the purple fire element. How much purple fire element was needed to condense such a large crystal? The entire purple crystal seemed to be secretly communicating with the entire heaven and earth. It was firmly embedded there. In order to move it, one would undoubtedly need a power that could shake the entire world. No wonder it could suppress Hong Tai-long and prevent him from escaping. Yu Qianzhou, who was pushing his palm forward, slowly closed his eyes. The hazy purple mist began to slowly revolve and spread in all directions, silently returning to the heaven and earth. Purple mist rapidly rose from the purple crystal, and at the same time, it was also slowly shrinking. Half a day later, the entire purple crystal had completely dissipated. Hong Tailong's arms trembled, and the golden chains were controlled by him like they were his fingers. They quickly fell from his wrists and he opened his mouth and directly sucked them into his stomach. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He couldn't help but ask, "How did you eat it into your stomach?" Hong Tailong looked at his arms that had regained their freedom and laughed heartily. "There's a space in the stomach of my dragon race. It's just like your storage space. It's used to store things. So that's how it is." Yu Qianqiu looked at his stomach and felt a chill. He waved his hand and said, "Since you're already free, come with me." Hong Tailong was in high spirits. He readily agreed. He then asked curiously, "Where are we going?" The boiling lava flowed in the sky, but not a single drop fell. It illuminated the underground space with a red light. Yu Qianqiu raised his head and narrowed his eyes. Jintai and Bai Qi have opened the seal to the demonic realm. Now, Demon Lord Three Knights is leading the demonic realm army to sweep across the immortal and netherworld. I've personally witnessed Demon Lord Three Knights slaughtering over 200 million immortal realm cultivators. They don't even want to let the human realm off. Previously, it was precisely because the demonic realm army attacked that I activated the demonic ghost immortal punishing formation to deal with them. They probably won't barge into the human realm before they understand the situation here. Jintai and Bai Qi opened the passage to the demonic realm. Hong Tailong couldn't help but be shocked. His red brows furrowed. He recalled that Demon Lord Three Knights was Yi Tiankong's father. He then asked in a heavy voice, "You mean you want me to help you deal with the demonic realm army?" "I don't mind telling you the truth. I've been to the demonic realm before. I have the strength to fight against Demon Lord Three Knights' great demon king, but I'm definitely not Demon Lord Three Knights' opponent." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. "We'll deal with Demon Lord Three Knights one step at a time. What we need to do now is to stop them from harassing this human realm. The passage to the demonic realm is still sealed, but we need to destroy the immortal ascension stage to cut off any possibility of them barging in. Most importantly, we need to find a way to seal the passage to the netherworld and completely cut off any possibility of them entering this human realm. You should know how to seal the passage between the two realms, right? It's a pity I don't know sealing techniques." Hong Tailong stared at the slightly disappointed Yu Qianqiu with a burning gaze. "But I know a way to block the passage between the two realms. If someone uses a divine artifact to guard the entrance of the passage, it can also prevent people from the two realms from passing through." Yu Qianqiu's gaze slowly met his. He said in a heavy voice, "You mean you want me to use the heaven and earth splitting arrow to block the passage between the two realms?" "That's right." Hong Tailong nodded his head firmly. The heaven and earth splitting arrow isn't an ordinary divine artifact. If it hasn't recognized a master, blocking the passage between the two realms would still be dangerous. But it has already recognized a master. As long as we use it to block the passage between the two realms, no one will be able to move it. Unless you die. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment, then slowly said, "For the peace of this human realm, I've spared no expense and put in a lot of effort. Now that things have come to this, how can I let it repeat the mistakes of the past because of my selfishness? Looks like this is the only way." As he spoke, he opened his eyes wide and shouted, "All right. Let's do it. Use the divine arrow to block it." He was actually willing to give up on the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Hong Tailong was instantly filled with deep veneration. This kind of person didn't make him work for nothing. However, he had thought too highly of Yu Qianqiu. Actually, he didn't want to give up on such a divine artifact, but the situation forced him to do so for the time being. In addition, he had always suspected that there was some kind of conspiracy on this divine arrow, so he was in a state of anxiety. Besides, he believed that once he found a way to seal it, he would still be able to retrieve the divine arrow. Yu Qianqiu had already waved his hand, and the surrounding scenery changed continuously. When the scenery stabilized, the two of them had already arrived at the entrance to the netherworld. When Hong Tailong saw the sea of netherworld flames in front of him, he immediately turned around to take a look. The huge netherworld iron steel inscriptions and that huge door made him understand that they had already arrived at the entrance to the netherworld. He suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu and cried out in shock, "You have a star bead? Nonsense. I'm the one who executes punishment on behalf of the heavens. What's so strange about having a star bead?" Yu Qianqiu revealed a very disdainful expression. He had only revealed a little bit of his skill to make Hong Tailong follow him wholeheartedly. He had originally wanted to show off a little, but he didn't expect the other party to be so knowledgeable, saving him a lot of effort to explain. He casually took out the heaven and earth splitting arrow and held it in his hand, stroking it regretfully. Then he resolutely and forcefully pushed open the door to the netherworld. Sharp eerie winds instantly gushed out like ink. The divine arrow entered the crack of the door and he shouted, "Expand!" The entire divine arrow immediately shone with golden light, and it rapidly grew longer and thicker, expanding the door to the netherworld. Only when half of the arrow was inside and the other half was outside, did the eerie winds cease. Seeing that Yu Qianshou had really given up on the heaven and earth splitting arrow, Hong Tailong was incomparably moved. Previously he suspected that Yu Qianshou would be reluctant to part with the heaven and earth splitting arrow and had been waiting to see. At this moment he instantly let go of his pride as a dragon and willingly submitted to Yu Qianshou. Hong Tailong took a deep breath and said, "I've heard a legend in the immortal realm. This door to the netherworld is extraordinary. It's easy to shatter but it's hard to merge again. If someone can use the true Samadhi fire to completely erase the various forms of life on the door and merge the entire door together seamlessly, separating the yin and yang, then the yin and yang will be severed. The entire door to the netherworld will disappear, and the netherworld passage will also disappear completely." "There's such a thing?" Yu Qianshou was startled. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. He stretched out his palm and green, black and purple flames appeared in his palm at the same time. He said, "I can control these three mystical flames, but my cultivation is too low. I can't merge them into the true Samadhi fire. Otherwise, so what if I completely sever the yin and yang realms?" Chapter 1173. Hong Tailong was speechless with his mouth slightly agape. He was wondering how many things this guy had hidden on him. How could he have anything he wanted? Furthermore, each and every one of them was unimaginable. As expected of the executioner of heaven, he was blessed by the heavens. Yu Qianshou retracted the flames in his palm and closed his mouth. "Since you possess three types of true fire, you must be proficient in the art of controlling fire. It won't be difficult to fuse them into the Samadhi true fire." Hong Tailong smiled faintly and said, "I can use the divine dragon empowerment technique to transfer a portion of my cultivation to you so that you have enough cultivation to fuse with the Samadhi true fire. However, it will take a long time. Without at least half a year of comprehension, it will be difficult to fuse them." Yu Qianshou's eyes lit up at first, but he shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Half a year? I can do many things in this half a year. Now is not the time. Thank you for your kind intentions, but this is the time where I can use you. Preserving your cultivation is more useful to me." Seeing that he was able to resist the temptation of transferring his cultivation, Hong Tailong fell into deep thought as if he was hesitating about something. After a long time he slowly said, "There is another way. That is to devour the fire spirit, one of the five spirits of heaven and earth. Let the fire spirit's innate comprehension of fire fuse with you and you can quickly fuse them into the Samadhi true fire." "Fire spirit?" Yu Qianshou mocked himself. "Let alone devouring the fire spirit, I can even devour the five spirits of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth." Hong Tailong was stunned and said, "What do you mean?" "I know all of the five elements control arts." "What do you mean?" Yu Qianshou said disapprovingly. There was not a trace of pride on his face. "What?" Hong Tailong was shocked again and was stunned for a long time before he said anxiously, "You know all of the five elements control arts? How is that possible? How can a person cultivate all of the five elements control arts? What happens when the five elements clash? Don't you feel uncomfortable?" "You should have told me this earlier. I have already practiced it. What's the use of saying it now? Besides, I don't feel uncomfortable at all." Yu Qianshou shrugged. Then he stretched out his left hand and a water dragon appeared. It swam one round and ran back. With a stretch of his right hand, an earth dragon emerged and circled around before returning. Following that, a golden dragon appeared from each of his hands, and he kissed the greenwood elemental dragon. After separating, he retracted his hands. His shy and bashful look after having an affair was simply vivid and lifelike. Hong Tailong was instantly dumbfounded. The corners of his mouth twitched incessantly, and he screamed madly in his heart that there was no justice in this world. This guy's body is simply a treasure trove, as expected of the person who executes punishments on behalf of the heavens. However, can a person who executes punishments on behalf of the heavens be so extravagant and unscrupulous? He was simply a person who was blessed by the heavens. If they were in the God realm, they would be envied to death. Hong Tailong no longer had any doubts about Yu Qianshou's identity as the Heaven's executioner. He dared to pat his chest and guarantee that if he were to admit the wrong person again, he would dig his eyeballs out and feed them to the dogs. Let's go. We'll go to the dense fog forest and completely destroy the Immortal Ascension stage. Just as Yu Qianshou was about to wave his hand and teleport away, Hong Tailong held his hand and sighed, "I know where the fire spirit is." Yu Qianshou was startled. His eyes quickly lit up as he asked, "Where?" "You've already met him twice." Hong Tailong retracted his hand and sighed. Yu Qianshou was instantly confused. Hong Tailong had been trapped for so many years, and this was the first time he had come out with him. However, he said that he had already met him twice. Just who could it be? Suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. He recalled the kid who slept on the green lotus with his buttocks naked. He said in astonishment, "Could it be that kid in the green fire?" Apart from that kid, he really couldn't think of anyone else that Hong Tailong knew he had met twice. Furthermore, that kid was actually sleeping in the fire. His background was truly unimaginable. So, this is all fate. Only now do I understand why someone inexplicably gave me 9 precious green lotus fire seeds when I was about to leave the Divine Dragon Mountain. Feelings are all prepared for you. It's all destined and arranged. Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianshou and shook his head with a bitter smile. That's right, it's Qing'er. Originally, the 9-petaled green lotus could nurture 9 fire spirits. Unfortunately, you stole the green fire at the critical moment of nurturing them. Hence, 8 of them died prematurely. Yu Qianshou took a deep breath. Although that fat kid was crafty, he really couldn't do anything to him after he devoured him. He originally thought it was Hong Tailong's grandson. He didn't expect it to be a fire spirit. After a moment of silence, he shook his head with a bitter smile. Then forget it. I really can't do it. After all, that kid is not an outsider. It's nothing. I won't erase his consciousness. I will extract it and store it. In the future, when I have the chance to return to the divine world, I will find a way to find the green lotus fire seed for him to nurture again. Hong Tailong's smile was a little unnatural. It's just that it will take many years for him to be reborn. It will be hard on him. Yu Qianshou lowered his head and frowned for a while. Let's talk about this later. Let's go destroy the Immortal Ascension stage first. With a wave of his hand, the two disappeared through the exit of the Netherworld. Meanwhile, the ball of black light that escaped from the entrance of the Netherworld passed through the Netherworld and directly returned to the Immortal World's mystic Immortal City. Demon Lord 3 Knights, who occupied the newly constructed branch of Unrequited Love Palace, was sitting high above. Currently, almost no one in the Netherworld or Immortal World dared to resist the Demon World's army. Wang Qing and his son had also escaped into the Netherworld God Palace. Below, a few great demon kings were discussing how to provoke the Netherworld God Palace. At this moment, a cry of alarm came from outside. Everyone turned to look and saw a ball of black light charging into the main hall and floating in the air. A majestic and ancient aura immediately filled the entire main hall, shocking everyone's soul. The few great demon kings and Eunuch Li, who was standing beside Demon Lord 3 Knights, all knelt down on one knee in shock. They shouted in unison, "Greetings, Lord Demon God." The Demon Dao generals who came to capture the intruder and the Demon Dao generals sitting inside the main hall all trembled. Jin Tai was among them while Bai Qi had gone to the Netherworld. Everyone didn't expect this ball of black light to be the arrival of the legendary demon god. They immediately knelt down and shouted in worship. Demon Lord 3 Knights, on the other hand, had never come into contact with a demon god before. When he saw everyone's actions, he sucked in a cold breath. Just as he got up and was about to kneel down, he heard Yan Zhuixing's urgent voice. "Demon Lord, save me." Everyone was stunned and looked up. A red light flashed in Demon Lord 3 Knights' eyes. When he saw Yan Zhuixing's nascent soul, he immediately stopped kneeling and said in shock, "Yan Zhuixing, how did you become like this? Where's your corporeal body?" The others also stood up in shock, feeling like they had knelt for nothing. Yan Zhuixing, who was in the black light, immediately recounted the tragic experience of him, Li Tian, and the other 3 great demon kings barging into the human world. In the end, he emphasized with grief and indignation, "If it wasn't for Lord Demon God breaking through the void and rushing over from the divine world to save me, I would have been like great demon King Li Tian and the others, turning into ashes. Demon Lord, please find me a suitable corporeal body." Everyone sucked in a cold breath. They didn't expect Yu Qianshou to be so powerful. He actually hit such a terrifying killing move and instantly killed everyone. What was even more shocking was that in order to save Yan Zhuixing, Lord Demon God had instantly broken through the void from the divine world and descended into the human world. Just how powerful was his cultivation? It was simply unimaginable. Many people's gazes were filled with extreme reverence. There was even reverence in them. They couldn't wait to see Lord Demon God's glory with their own eyes. Demon Lord Three Knights clenched his fists tightly. He was actually trembling in excitement because of Demon God's divine ability. He was also honored by the glory of his ancestors. In the past, there were actually many people who doubted whether Yan Zhuoxing was Lord Demon God's personal disciple. They were very suspicious about him becoming the Vice Palace Master of Demon Palace and felt that it was impossible. Why would Lord Demon God choose a personal disciple from the divine world to the human world? However, everything that happened in front of them made everyone dispel their suspicions. They were extremely respectful to Yan Zhuoxing and didn't dare to underestimate him in the slightest. Demon Lord Three Knights felt that it was a great pity that he couldn't see his ancestors' shocking glory with his own eyes. That was the god he had heard everyone around him praise since he was young. It was the source of his pride. Lord Demon God's glorious achievements had already been engraved in his bones. He had always wanted to repeat that proud legend. He calmed his excited emotions and slowly let out a breath. He tilted his head slightly to look at Eunuch Li beside him. Eunuch Li nodded in understanding. His gaze quickly swept across the crowd and finally landed on a guard at the door. He discovered that his cultivation and physical body matched Yan Zhuoxing's nascent soul. Suddenly he grabbed at the air and a gust of wind blew in the hall. That person was sucked over without any ability to resist. After being grabbed by the shoulder by Eunuch Li, he immediately understood that he was about to be possessed. He immediately cried out, "Demon Lord, spare me! Demon Lord!" Before he finished speaking, Eunuch Li had already slapped his head. Several white halos of light repeatedly expelled the dark red blood mist from his body. Suddenly the white halos of light quickly retracted. Eunuch Li pinched open the guard's mouth and twisted it towards the black light that was enveloping Yan Zhuoxing's nascent soul in the air. With a whoosh, the black light directly entered the person's mouth. That person's abdomen swelled and squirmed, and then there was no more movement. Eunuch Li casually picked up that person by the waist. Without saying anything to anyone, he turned around and went to the back hall. After everyone present witnessed this scene, they all kept quiet out of fear, not daring to say anything. Demon Lord Three Knights' gaze swept across the hall and landed on Jin Tai's somewhat strange expression. He shook off his scarlet cloak and sat down. He coldly asked, "Jin Tai, what's going on in that human realm? I heard that you and Bai Qi joined hands to fight a person called the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords. You even suffered a great loss. I believe you know the situation there better than us." Jin Tai hurriedly walked to the center and bowed. "Demon Lord, what's going on in that human realm?" Back then, that Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords appeared strangely. This subordinate even suspected that he was someone from the demon realm. From what Vice Palace Lord said, it was likely that the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords' heaven and earth splitting arrow that heavily injured them. I didn't expect that it had already fallen into Yu Qianzhou's hands. However, the heaven and earth splitting arrow back then didn't seem to have such great power. This subordinate is also a little confused. Chapter 1174. Yu Qianzhou and Hong Tailong's figures suddenly appeared outside the dense fog forest where the colorful fog lingered. The two of them looked around and didn't find any movement. Their gazes landed on the gorgeous fog with different expressions. In reality, it was very unlikely that anyone would come here. Although the colorful fog was mesmerizing, there was no need for ordinary people to set foot in this barren land. Hong Tailong suddenly turned around and looked at Yu Qianzhou, sighing, "Star bead is really magical. It can actually go wherever you want to go. No matter how far the distance is, it's all in the blink of an eye. It's not as magical as you think. You have to set the coordinates beforehand." Yu Qianzhou paused for a moment. He turned around and asked curiously, "How much do you know about star bead?" He originally thought that the other party understood star bead very well. In the end, the other party's words made him suspicious. "I'm not too sure. I've only heard rumors that it's a divine artifact refined by Tao. Every bead might have different functions, but those who can use star bead are people who can inherit Tao." Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianzhou with a complicated gaze. There was also some envy in it. Yu Qianzhou smiled disapprovingly. He didn't even know who Tao was, let alone inheriting Tao. Just the star bead that he knew had already changed owners 3 times. First, it landed in Bai Changchun's hands. Then it landed in by Sujin's hands. Finally he picked it up. It had nothing to do with inheriting Tao. However, he only kept these words in his heart. He wouldn't tell Hong Tailong. However, he was still rather interested in that mysterious Tao. He asked, "Who exactly is that Tao? I've heard people mentioning it several times, but they didn't mention it in detail. Can you tell me about it?" Hong Tailong shook his head and said, "I've only heard of it. I've never seen it. It seems that only a few people have seen it. However, my dragon race and phoenix race have always obeyed him." Damn it. Seems like experts like to play mysterious. Yu Qianqiu curled his lips in disdain and looked at the dense fog forest again. "What do we do now?" Hong Tailong looked at the seven-colored fog with a perplexed expression. Then he said decisively, "Go in. First, I'll destroy the immortal ascension stage and naturally cut off the connection between the immortal world and the human world. Then I'll take the soul-forming smoke." "All right." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and the two of them disappeared. In the blink of an eye, they reappeared in the golden square. The moment Hong Tailong landed on the ground, he scanned his surroundings. Then a red light erupted from his body and soared into the sky. His astonishing aura forced Yu Qianqiu to quickly move far away to observe. Roar. A resounding and vigorous dragon roar resounded throughout the world, shaking the entire basin and the golden plaza. The rainbow-colored clouds in the surroundings began to surge. After the red light that pierced through the heavens and the earth vanished, a 200 zhang long red dragon stretched out its claws. Its imposing aura was unstoppable. After its body, which was covered in red scales, curled up and swam back, the arrogant dragon shows remorse suddenly raised a gust of wind and plunged down. Boom. The altar in the center of the golden plaza was smashed deep into the ground. Then the huge red dragon rapidly circled around the huge basin. The huge dragon's fangs opened its mouth and sucked in crazily. All the gold bricks, gold nuggets, gold pillars and other gold objects on the golden plaza were sucked into its stomach in just a short while. The entire dazzling golden plaza immediately became a scene of devastation. Then the huge red dragon shook its head and tail at lightning speed, crazily crashing into the surrounding mountains and basins. Rumble. Amidst the rumbling sounds, Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air and quickly dodged to the sky to observe the situation. He saw that the huge basin below had completely collapsed in just a moment's time. Everything had been razed to the ground. The rainbow-colored fog that had gathered in the surroundings had also lost its restraints and started to disperse with the wind. Oh! The dragon roared once again. The huge red dragon soared into the sky and looked down at the vast land. Looking at the huge dragon beside him with its four claws wide open and its long body wriggling with the sound of wind and thunder, Yu Qianqiu was so excited that he actually dodged and stood on the huge dragon's ferocious head. He stood between the two antlers with his hands clasped behind his back. A feeling of arrogance welled up in him. The huge dragon's red eyes turned to look at him. It did not show any displeasure. Instead, it said in a deep rumbling voice, "You have the star bead. Are you afraid of the soul-transforming smoke?" "No." Yu Qianqiu shook his head forcefully. "Then stand still. I'm going to take this soul-transforming smoke. I can't let it wreak havoc on the world." Oh! The dragon roared angrily in the sky. The huge red scales on its body slightly opened up. Its aura surged up and down its body. Suddenly the wind and clouds surged. The huge dragon opened its fangs and swooped down. The vast land was suddenly swept up by a gust of wind. A strong suction force carried the rainbow-colored fog into the huge dragon's mouth like a rainbow. The huge dragon soared into the sky and danced around, chasing after the scattered rainbow-colored fog. After sweeping away all the rainbow-colored fog, the huge dragon shook its head and waved its tail as it soared into the sky. After circling around its surroundings once, another resounding dragon roar shook the heavens and the earth. Without any hesitation, it directly rode the wind and climbed the clouds, flying across the sky towards the horizon. Dragon's roar of the nine heavens changes. Hong Tailong might have been trapped underground for a long time. It had been a long time since he indulged himself in the sky. From time to time, he would let out a deafening roar to vent his emotions. Yu Qianqiu expressed his understanding. He did not stop Hong Tailong and allowed him to soar into the sky. Meanwhile, he was also enjoying the legendary feeling of riding a dragon. No matter how fierce the wind blew against him, his green robe fluttered in the sky. He felt that his life was not in vain. However, it was, after all, a huge fellow flying in the sky. Coupled with Hong Tailong's deafening roars from time to time, it was hard for the mortals on the ground not to notice it. However, no one could see the tiny Yu Qianqiu standing on the dragon's head. "Look, what's that in the sky? Divine dragon. It's a divine dragon. It's a divine dragon. Everyone look, it's a divine dragon." Passing through the borders of Huaxia, the mortals on the ground raised their heads and pointed at the sky. Everyone who could walk rushed out of their houses or onto the streets, pointing at the sky. Hong Tai-long seemed to enjoy the feeling of being the center of attention and admiration again. It was as if he had found the supreme glory that belonged to the dragon race. He intentionally slowed down his flying speed and roared even more frequently, as if he was afraid that others could not see him. When he saw a city with many people, he would even fly a few rounds in the sky to show off, flying towards the most crowded places. Yu Qianqiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. This Hong Tai-long was old, but he was still a flirtatious dragon. If he had known earlier, he would have dragged some people to see the scene of him being imprisoned. In the sky above Huaxia's capital city, a few dragon roars shook the entire city. In the blink of an eye, the streets were filled with people, pointing at the dragon flying in the sky. Endless sounds of astonishment and commotion rose and fell. In the palace, Shi Wenguang and the officials were discussing matters when they suddenly heard the shocking dragon roar. Another guard ran over to report that there was a dragon flying in the sky. Shi Wenguang and the officials immediately ran out to watch the commotion. The imperial concubines of the imperial concubines also stood outside and looked up at the sky. In the imperial preceptor Yongzhen's residence, a stream of light shot into the sky. Shi Xiaotian stood tall in the sky, looking at the dragon flying in circles in front of him. Other than shock, he was also on high alert. He vaguely realized that there was someone standing on the dragon's head. When Hong Tai-long's vanity was satisfied and he left, Shi Xiaotian suddenly realized that the person riding on the dragon was actually Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing with his hands behind his back, also noticed him. He nodded at him and smiled. The dragon instantly flew past the petrified Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian was startled awake by the strong wind and immediately shouted, "Boss!" He quickly chased after him. Yu Qianqiu turned to look at him and waved his hand with a warm smile, indicating for him to go back. He then turned back and scolded softly, "Hong Tai-long, have you had enough of being coquettish? If someone familiar sees you, they would think that I like to show off. I've only come out for a breath of fresh air after over 100,000 years. I've lost my composure. Please forgive me." Hong Tai-long chuckled. With a shake of his body, he quickly adjusted his direction and increased his speed, flying straight for the demon region. How could Shi Xiaotian catch up to Hong Tai-long's flying speed? Seeing Yu Qianqiu riding the dragon into the horizon, he couldn't catch up no matter how hard he tried. A feeling of helplessness welled up in his heart as he stopped in the sky. His face was filled with desolation. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Boss would be able to ride a dragon and fly in the sky. Every time he saw Boss would give him a surprise that made him envious. Boss's level was getting higher and higher, and he was falling further and further behind. To be honest, the life that Yu Qianqiu had displayed was the cultivation life that Shi Xiaotian had yearned for a long time. Only by cultivating like this could one not cultivate in vain. He had always desired this, but it was a pity that Boss did not bring him along, leaving him with endless melancholy and grief. However, Shi Xiaotian was inexperienced, so how could he know the dangers behind this glory? Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu had purposely pulled Shi Xiaotian out of danger because of their friendship. Humans were always like this. What they could not obtain was what they desired the most. They would often neglect the beauty around them. Not long after the depressed Shi Xiaotian returned to the imperial preceptor Yongzhen's residence, his father Shi Wenguang hurriedly rushed over. He pulled Shi Xiaotian aside and asked anxiously, "Was that a divine dragon flying in the sky just now? Was it a divine dragon? Did I see wrongly?" The shock on his face had yet to fade. He had purposely come over to seek confirmation. Shi Xiaotian sighed and slowly sat on the spacious armchair. With a desolate smile, he said, "Yes. The one riding the divine dragon was Ol. Mr. Yu?" "It's Mr. Yu?" Shi Wenguang exclaimed. His face was filled with envy as he shook his head and sighed. After a long time he said, "Riding the divine dragon to fly in the sky. Mr. Yu is really a godly person. Why didn't you invite him over?" Wanting to see Yu Qianqiu was a pretense. In fact, he did not like to see Yu Qianqiu at all. This was because he was used to being an emperor and was used to being high and mighty. He was a little conflicted about bowing to others. In fact, he really wanted to see the legendary divine dragon up close. Mr. Yu Qianshou has other matters to attend to, so it's inconvenient for him to come. Shi Xiaodian squeezed out a smile and said, Father, you should go back to handle the affairs of the country. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion. Shi Wenguang sighed and left, leaving Shi Xiaotian paralyzed on the armchair. In his mind, he recalled the awe-inspiring scene of his boss riding the divine dragon. It was a pity that he could not share in the glory. Little did he know that after they parted, the two of them never met again. The scene of Yu Qianshou riding the divine dragon and turning back to wave at him with a smile became the most unforgettable scene in Shi Xiaotian's long life. He searched for it in the future but could never think of it. He could only reminisce about it. Chapter 1175. The sky was high and the clouds were vast. Not a single trace of green could be seen in the demonic ghost region. It was no longer the demonic ghost region that was covered in dark clouds and overgrown with demonic ghosts. In the vast wilderness, Yu Qianshou walked around with his hands behind his back. Under his feet was an underground space that spewed out green flames. Below him was a surging lava river. Yu Qianshou sent Hong Tailong down, but he didn't dare to face the naked fat kid who was looking at him curiously. He quickly escaped outside, not wanting to hear or see the conversation between Hong Tailong and the kid. Yu Qianshou walked to a cliff with his hands behind his back and looked around. He was unable to connect the desolate scene before him with the famous demonic ghost region of the past. He silently pondered for a long time. Suddenly the ground shook, followed by the sound of something breaking through the ground. Yu Qianshou pursed his lips but he didn't turn around. Green flames gushed out from the hole on the ground as Hong Tailong slowly rose up with the bare buttocks child in tow. The child looked left and right, curiously looking at this desolate world. This was the first time he had seen the true appearance of this world. A small bird that flew across the sky had aroused his great interest, causing his gaze to chase after it with an unrelenting desire to part with it. Yu Qianshou. Hong Tailong's voice was heavy as he walked behind Hong Tailong with the kid. Yu Qianshou slowly turned around and saw the kid cowering behind Hong Tailong in fear, as if he already knew his fate. Yu Qianshou wanted to squeeze out a harmless smile, but it looked worse than crying. He coughed and smiled bitterly at Hong Tailong. Forget it. Hong Tailong pulled the kid out from behind, squatted down and looked at the kid. What's wrong? Didn't we agree on this? The kid looked at Yu Qianshou with fear and replied weakly, Grandpa, I'm scared. Hong Tailong buried his head, then raised it and smiled. Didn't Grandpa tell you? The immortal realm doesn't allow people from the lower realm to step into it. This is the only way I can bring you back to the immortal realm. Furthermore, you shouldn't exist in the mortal realm. Hong Tailong, forget it. Yu Qianshou cupped his fists and bowed. Unexpectedly, the child bit his finger and said to Yu Qianshou with a bit of shyness, Can I go see the world first? Then he lowered his head and said in an aggrieved tone, I still don't know what the human world is like. I'm afraid that when I reach the God realm. Hong Tailong frowned but Yu Qianshou hurriedly said, Sure. Hong Tailong, bring him around to take a look. I beg you. He could only beg Hong Tailong. He did not dare to accompany this child to look around. Hong Tailong carried the child and turned into a beam of light, disappearing into the distance. Yu Qianshou touched his forehead in a dilemma. He walked to the place where the blue fire was spewing out and jumped down. He used the metal art and earth art to seal the fire hole. Then he flew back up and used the earth art to completely bury the space below. Then he sat down cross-legged on the ground. 3 days later, Hong Tailong carried the child back. The child had already put on his clothes and was holding a candied haw in each of his hands. However, his eyes had lost their usual liveliness. He was just a gluttonous child who felt that the candied haw was delicious and was munching on it numbly. Yu Qianshou looked at the child and sensed something. Hong Tailong placed the child in front of him. The child looked at Yu Qianshou blankly as if he did not recognize him. Hong Tailong took away the candied haw in the child's hands, sealed it in a crystal ball and swallowed it. When the child saw that there was nothing left to eat, he immediately hugged Hong Tailong's thigh and wailed. Glistening tears immediately appeared in Hong Tailong's eyes. He raised his head to the sky and howled. After which, his hand moved like lightning, slapping the child's head. The clothes on the child's body instantly turned into ashes, while the child's body condensed into a red ball of light in his palm. Hong Tailong sent the red ball of light to the mouth of Yu Qianshou, who was sitting cross-legged. Yu Qianshou's dry lips swallowed and slowly opened his mouth. Hong Tailong slapped the red ball of light into his mouth, then turned towards the sky and choked with tears. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt a boiling sensation in his abdomen. He suppressed his agitated emotions and forced the red ball of light in his abdomen into his dantian. Suddenly, a golden light burst out from Yu Qianqiu's dantian and shone on the red ball of light. In an instant, the red ball of light turned back into the child. The child cheered and flew toward the red crystal bead. He swallowed the red crystal bead into his stomach. In an instant, red light burst out from his body. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a connection with the child. The child's expression instantly turned solemn. He sat cross-legged on the spot where the red crystal ball originally was and began to revolve around the nascent soul in his dantian along with the other 4 crystal balls. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that his cultivation had increased a little. However, the increase was not huge. When he thought about how he could accept the cultivation of the 5 spirits after devouring them, he reckoned that the child's cultivation had fused with his own. The child's innate understanding of fire surged into his mind like a tidal wave. He then began to quietly sort it out. At night, Hong Tailong gazed at the endless starry sky with his hands behind his back. Suddenly, a light flashed behind him. He slowly turned his head and saw a ball of blue fire on Yu Qianqiu's left shoulder, a ball of black fire on his right shoulder, and a ball of purple fire on top of his head. The situation was extremely strange. Not long after, the blue and black fire on his left and right shoulders slowly floated to the top of his head and pressed towards the purple fire in the middle. After the 3 flames collided with each other, they violently fluctuated as if they were repelling each other. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting cross-legged, had a grave expression on his face. After about 2 hours, the 3 violently fluctuating flames finally calmed down and started to merge together bit by bit. When the 3 flames had completely merged together, Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly opened. 2 rainbow-colored rays of light shot out from his eyes. The overlapping 3 colored flames above his head rumbled like thunder and completely merged together in an instant. The gorgeous 3 colored flames turned into 7 colors. Instantly, the flames rose to a height of 100 meters. A rainbow-colored fire dragon burned incessantly above Yu Qianqiu's head. The terrifyingly high temperature immediately caused the ground to crack with crackling sounds. Countless cracks rapidly extended in all directions. Hong Tailong's pupils shrank. Even though he was a fire elemental fire dragon, he still found it hard to endure. Suddenly he felt a terrifyingly high temperature surrounding his body. Clearly Yu Qianqiu had noticed it. True Samadhi fire. Hong Tailong exclaimed. The remaining sadness on his face was instantly swept away. He clapped his hands and shouted, "You succeeded!" The rainbow-colored rays of light that burst out from Yu Qianqiu's eyes quickly retracted, forming 2 balls of rainbow-colored flames in his eyes. Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up and spread his arms to embrace the heavens and earth. His entire body instantly ignited with rainbow-colored flames, combining with the fire dragon above his head. They soared into the sky, reaching a height of 1,000 meters. The world flickered with rainbow-colored light, illuminating the desolate demon domain. It was as if the demon domain had obtained a new life. Yu Qianqiu slowly looked at Hong Tailong and said indifferently, "So, this is the true Samadhi fire. So it is rainbow-colored. I can feel its terrifying destructive might. It even gives me the urge to fight the demon lord 3 nights head-on." Hong Tailong turned a deaf ear to Xiao Chen's words. He raised his head and looked at the rainbow-colored flames that soared 1,000 meters in shock. He cried out involuntarily, "Why is there so much true Samadhi fire?" Lowering his head, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "How many blue flames, black flames and purple flames are hidden in your body? You actually managed to fuse so many true Samadhi fire? This is only a portion. The true Samadhi fire in my body is enough to turn the area within 1,000 meters into a sea of true Samadhi fire. Furthermore, after fusing the 3 flames, it is equivalent to having 2 empty spots in my body. I can also collect the 3 flames at any time and fuse them at any time. My body can store more than twice the amount of true Samadhi fire. A mere 1,000-meter-long fire dragon is nothing," Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. Hong Tailong shook his head in disbelief. He had seen the true Samadhi fire by chance in the immortal realm. However, he had only collected 3 types of flames and fused them, then stored them in special treasures for future use. He had never heard of anyone being able to store the true Samadhi fire in their own body. Furthermore, it was such a large-scale storage and could be refined and stored at any time. This is simply unbelievable. If the artifact refinement experts of the immortal realm were to find out about this, they would definitely capture you and use you as a refinement fire cauldron. You must know that the best fire seed for refining divine equipment is this true samadhi fire that can refine anything, Hong Tailong exclaimed. Yu Qianqiu gently clasped his palms together, and the soaring true samadhi fire immediately retreated back into his body. The rainbow-colored flames leaping in his eyes also disappeared at the same time. Only then did Hong Tailong dare to approach him. He patted his shoulder and laughed. With so much true samadhi fire, you and I now have the capital to make a trip to the immortal realm and the netherworld. We'll slaughter those bastards until they wail like ghosts and howl like wolves. We'll let them know that I, Hong Tailong, have returned. Ha! Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. By right I should be happy. However, I can't feel happy at all. This is all thanks to Qing. Speaking of that naked child, Hong Tailong's expression instantly dimmed. He smiled faintly and said, I wonder when I can return to the immortal realm. Even if I do return to the immortal realm, I'm afraid it'll be several tens of thousands of years before I can see Qing again. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath. He pulled himself together and said, all right. Let's not talk about such a depressing matter. Let's go to the gate of the netherworld to retrieve the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Then we'll use the true samadhi fire to completely seal the passageway to the netherworld. After that, we'll join hands and go to the immortal realm and the netherworld to deal with them. It'll be best if we can capture Qintai. I'll devour him as well. At that time, my cultivation will skyrocket. I want to see how the devil path will unify the three realms. The two of them disappeared from where they were at the same time. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in front of the gate of the netherworld. Looking at the gigantic divine arrow embedded in the gate of the netherworld, Yu Qianqiu made a grabbing motion with his 5 fingers and said sternly, come back. The divine arrow immediately shone with a golden light and shrunk rapidly. The gate of the netherworld closed quickly as well. A chilly wind that was as sharp as ink whistled out. After the gate of the netherworld was completely closed, there were still a few large holes in the middle of the gate. They were the large holes made by the sharp hexagonal blade of the divine arrow. The chilly wind that was as sharp as ink continued to pour out from the holes. Chapter 1176. Yu Qianqiu's long green robe fluttered in the fierce chilly wind, but he was indifferent to it. His eyes fell on the reliefs on the dark gate. The faces of the old man, the child, the man, and the woman were all different. Their expressions were vivid and lifelike as if they were telling him something. Wang. A rainbow-colored light blossomed in this underground world filled with cold wind. The true samadhi fire enveloped Yu Qianqiu's entire body. The wind didn't scatter it as if it was solid. Yu Qianqiu's expression was solemn. He didn't know if he could completely seal the underworld passage by doing this, nor did he know if it was right, but he knew that this ghost gate was connected to the human world. It was too unfair to the living beings in the human world. If the ghost cultivator inside was unhappy, the living beings in the human world would suffer. No matter if it's right or wrong, since the affairs of the world are unpredictable, then let me be the one to administer punishment on behalf of the heaven. Whether it's right or wrong, I will bear the responsibility alone. A loud voice that sounded like he had become a Buddha suddenly resounded in the underground space. Perhaps it was because he had become a demon, but the skeleton sculptures on the walls of the netherworld Iron Mountain immediately reverberated with the same voice. The voice was like the sound of endless Sanskrit. Hong Tailong's heart suddenly surged with an indescribable solemn feeling. His gaze swept across the surroundings, but he didn't know how this voice was formed. Yu Qianqiu had already struck out with his palm. The true samadhi fire on his body shot out from his arm, forcing back the cold wind that was blowing out. The rainbow-colored wall of fire covered the entire ghost gate of the netherworld. The expressions of the human skulls on the black door gradually changed. Then it slowly melted and disappeared, fusing with the entire door. It was as if all living beings had cut off their extravagant desires towards this world. All greed, anger, and delusion were separated into yin and yang. Dust to dust, dust to dust. The two worlds of yin and yang would never be connected again. The few cracks on the dark door were also gradually melted by the melted black molten iron. The gap between the door and the door frame was also completely closed. Yu Qianqiu withdrew the true samadhi fire back into his body with a serious expression. The mournful, sinister winds completely died down, and the echoes of the Buddhist chants also disappeared. After the two of them looked around, Yu Qianqiu turned around and spread his hands at Hong Tailong. Didn't you say that after the samadhi true fire sealed the underworld gate, the underworld passage would completely disappear? How come I don't feel anything? Could it be that it completely disappeared just like that? I've only heard of this legend. How would I know if it's true or not? Hong Tai-long smiled bitterly. Before he could finish his sentence, he realized that there was something wrong with Yu Qianzhou's gaze as he looked behind him. He quickly turned around and saw that the blazing ghost flames were gradually dying down. The blazing flames from earlier were slowly being suppressed, and the intensity of the flames gradually weakened to the point where there was nothing left. The red molten lava kept on seething. Suddenly, as if a hole had opened up in the ground, all the fiery red molten lava instantly gushed into the depths of the ground. The entire underground space became pitch black, and even with their cultivations they could not see each other. It was as if they had entered some kind of black hole. Yu Qianzhou immediately became vigilant, afraid that there might be some danger. He immediately wanted to release his divine sense to bring Hong Tai-long away, but he realized that he could not release his divine sense outside his body. What made him even more horrified was that his connection with Utopia had been completely severed. He could not leave even if he wanted to. Hong Tai-long. Yu Qianzhou opened his mouth and shouted, but he realized that he could not make any sound. He wanted to move his limbs, but he realized that it was just wishful thinking. It was as if his soul had completely lost connection with his physical body, and only his thoughts and consciousness still existed. Damn. How did this happen? Could it be that I've really done something wrong? Is this a punishment for me? Yu Qianzhou shouted silently into the endless darkness. A deep sense of fear rose from the bottom of his heart, but it was mostly filled with indignation and grief. He hysterically wanted to tear apart this endless darkness, but he was powerless to do so. Suddenly, spots of light flashed in front of his eyes, and he saw Hong Tai-long, who was just inches away from him. The horrified Hong Tai-long also saw him, and the two of them were stunned at the same time. They subconsciously raised their hands only to discover that they could move. However, their abilities had not returned. The two of them wanted to get closer, but they realized that no matter how fast they walked, they could not get close to each other. This short distance seemed to have become the end of the world. The two of them desperately ran toward each other. However, the two of them fell to the ground in exhaustion, unable to take another step forward. The endless feeling of strangeness almost caused the two of them to break down. They could see each other shouting loudly for them, but not only could they not hear it, neither could the other party. The two of them, who were sitting paralyzed on the ground, seemed to be floating in the endless void. They looked around helplessly, and the nether metal wall that was embossed with countless skulls suddenly became clear. Spots of light constantly floated out from the two empty eye sockets of the skulls. When the entire space was filled with countless spots of light, the skull wall quietly disappeared into the void. The drifting spots of light gradually moved rhythmically, but it also seemed to be without any pattern. Gradually, it formed a scene that looked like a vast starry sky. The two of them suddenly realized that they were sitting paralyzed in the endless starry sky, and they were even more shocked. The vast starry sky was weaving an ancient existence. Suddenly, all the stars trembled, and like a meteor shower, they flew toward a certain direction, some even passing through the bodies of the two of them. The two of them looked in that direction and they saw the door to the netherworld. All the meteor shower easily passed through the wall without any resistance, and the door to the netherworld was not damaged at all. The scene was exceptionally magnificent, and an indescribable feeling of great vicissitudes surged into the hearts of the two of them. When the last spot of light flew through the door, the entire door to the netherworld suddenly distorted, turning into a ball of black light. The black light was so deep that it seemed like it could devour everything. The more it spun, the bigger it became. Suddenly, it condensed into a point and disappeared. The two of them immediately felt the world tremble, as if they had woken up from a nightmare. The two of them stood together looking at each other. The bright and beautiful sunlight shone down from the sky, shining on the two of them. The two of them raised their heads to look at the sky in astonishment, and discovered that they had unknowingly stood in a vast and deep pit. The sun was at noon. Looking around, the door to the netherworld had disappeared, and the netherworld iron walls that were carved with countless skulls had also disappeared. The netherworld ghost flames, the surging magma, and even the netherworld hole formed by the netherworld iron had disappeared. It was as if the two of them had been transferred to a strange pit in an instant. A small insect that came out of nowhere fluttered its wings and flew between the two of them. The two of them stared at it without blinking. Perhaps the small insect was attracted by the bright colors, as it first flew towards Hong Tai-long, who was dressed in red and danced between his eyes. Hong Tai-long's eyes that were staring at it immediately turned into a cross-eyed look. The small insect circled around for a while before losing interest in Hong Tai-long. It seemed to be more interested in Yu Qianqiu, and directly landed on Yu Qianqiu's face. Yu Qianqiu's eyes turned and he subconsciously gave a slap. It was a clear and resounding slap, causing his own face to feel pain. Hong Tai Long stared at him in astonishment, while Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He raised his hand to take a look, and saw that the small insect had been slapped into pieces. The two of them looked at each other again and Hong Tai Long weakly shouted, "Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu was startled and immediately shouted, "Hong Tai Long?" The two of them heard each other's shout and looked at where they were standing. They were still in the same position as before the anomaly happened. They were not paralyzed on the ground at all. They moved their hands and feet and took a few steps forward. When the two of them got closer, they were touching and pinching each other like fools. Suddenly Yu Qianqiu gave Hong Tai Long a fierce slap on the face. Hong Tai Long covered his face and roared angrily, "What are you doing?" Yu Qianqiu picked his ears amidst the deafening roar and heaved a sigh of relief. "Damn it! He's really alive. That scared this old man to death. Where is this place?" He flew out as if nothing had happened. Not only was Hong Tai Long not angry, he was also pleasantly surprised when he came back to his senses, and flew out with him. The two of them stood at the edge of the huge crater and looked around. Hong Tai Long was not too familiar with this place, but Yu Qianqiu could recognize it. They were still within the desolate demonic ghost region, and the original territory of Ill Wind Valley had been completely dug away. He had no idea where it had been dug to. "Where is this?" Hong Tai Long asked, not daring to be sure. "We're still in the mortal realm where we're doing good deeds. You're right, the passageway to the netherworld has completely disappeared." Yu Qianqiu raised his head to look at the sun, and realized that the time had already changed from midnight to noon. However, the process that the two of them had experienced would definitely not exceed 4 hours, and it was a very strange experience. "Sigh. It's good that you're fine. I was almost scared to death. I've never encountered such a strange thing before." Hong Tai Long laughed and patted his chest in relief. After relaxing, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "What should we do next? Go to the immortal realm in the netherworld?" Yu Qianqiu nodded his head heavily, looked around and let out a long sigh and said, "The matters in this mortal realm are more or less settled. It's time to solve the problems in other places. Let's go." With a wave of his hand, the two of them disappeared at the same time. In the Divine Ruin Realm base, Hong Tai Long strolled around with his hands clasped behind his back. When everyone found out that he was the divine dragon that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch rode back then, they looked at him with incomparable shock, especially Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. When the two of them felt the powerful dragon aura on his body, they actually faintly felt uneasy and restless. However, when Hong Tai Long saw the pheasant standing on Wu Lishua's shoulder, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise, "Phoenix! So it's a dragon. Who are you? Why are you so noisy? I don't know you." The pheasant opened its eyes and choked him, then continued to stand on Wu Lishua's shoulder and closed its eyes to rest. Hong Tai Long was speechless. Originally he felt that he was quite high and mighty, but he didn't expect that there would even be a phoenix of the same level as him here. His sense of superiority was immediately dampened, and he immediately became more well-behaved, no longer showing off that he was a divine dragon. After Yu Qianqiu gathered the various leaders to inquire about the recent progress, he dragged Hong Tai Long to the Great Snowy Mountain in the Netherworld. Chapter 1177. In the Great Snow Mountain of the Underworld, deep in the snowy plains, there was an ice cliff glowing with icy blue light that had existed for countless years. Silver armor soldier, purple armor soldier, blue armor soldier, and red armor soldier paced back and forth in front of the ice palace's gate, as if guarding the gate. The ice souls inside the ice sculptures shone with brilliant colors. They looked helpless and melancholy, thinking about something. Thousand armor soldier. Demon King 3 Knight has led the army of Demon Dao back to the Three Realms. What do you think? Red armor soldier suddenly turned around and asked Silver armor soldier. Purple armor soldier and blue armor soldier turned around at the same time. He's already come out, what can I think? Silver armor soldier stopped in front of a carp ice sculpture. His gaze focused on the eyes of the ice sculpture. There were 2 black ice souls there. Red armor soldier slapped an ice pillar in the pavilion next to him and sighed. We took such a great risk to seal Demon King 3 Knight and the others back then. What a great price we paid. But now the Underworld Emperor has released them and we've become the dogs of Demon Dao again. Back then we risked our lives to seal the demon realm for the peace of the 3 realms. But now, soldier, You're thinking too much. Silver Armor Soldier looked at him coldly and said in a low voice, "The Underworld Emperor has his reasons for doing this." The other three were silent. Within the Ice Palace, Shui Linglong, who was wrapped in a furry fur coat, fell asleep peacefully again. However, her face still had a sickly flush. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress both heaved a sigh of relief. They cupped their hands towards Bai Qi, who walked down from the ice bed and said, "Thank you, Emperor of the Underworld. We only talk about friendship, not thanks." Bai Qi smiled elegantly as he stepped on the ice barefoot. "This is why I didn't expose our relationship even in the most difficult times. If I really want to thank you, my 4 brothers should be the one thanking you for taking care of them. Underworld Emperor, you're too kind." The Snow Empress shook her head and smiled bitterly. The true Samadhi fire in Linglong's body is getting harder and harder to suppress. If the Emperor of the Underworld hadn't arrived in time and used his profound cultivation to suppress it, we wouldn't know what to do. The Snow Empress sat quietly beside her daughter. Bai Qi looked at Shui Linglong, who was sleeping peacefully, and nodded with a serious expression. "Seems like it's getting more and more serious each time. Don't worry, if you need anything, just look for me. I'll be there anytime. I'll look for an opportunity to borrow the power of the Devil's Path to find the fire spirit of the 5 great spirits of heaven and earth. Hopefully, I'll be able to remove the Samadhi true fire from Linglong's body in one fell swoop." The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress looked at each other. They wanted to say something but hesitated. The Snow Emperor could not help but ask, "I heard that the Emperor of the Underworld has released the Demon Lord of 3 Nights and the others?" Bai Qi hesitated for a moment. He said, "I understand your worries, but you can rest assured. Demon Monarch 3 Nights has already promised me that I will still represent the Underworld and the Demonic Path Army will not harass you. As for the outside world, you and your wife have never cared about worldly affairs. The changes outside have nothing to do with you. The Great Snow Mountain is still your Great Snow Mountain. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to make the decision when the time comes." The Snow Emperor sighed in his heart. However, there was nothing he could do. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Thank you, Emperor of the Underworld." Bai Qi could guess what they were thinking. However, he was also in a difficult position. He still smiled warmly and said, "All right. My 4 brothers have troubled you for a long time. I'm here to bring them away with me. We'll meet again in the future." The couple hurriedly sent him off. The 3 of them walked him all the way to the entrance of the Ice Palace. Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers and the other 3 also came over to express their gratitude to the couple. Both sides had their own matters on their minds. After exchanging some pleasantries, they were about to leave. Bai Qi and the others had just turned around when they all froze on the spot. Even the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress were no exception. 2 figures suddenly appeared on the ice cliff. Yu Qianshou and Hong Tailong were startled when they saw Bai Qi and the others. Hong Tailong suddenly laughed wildly and said, "You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but you'll find what you're looking for without even looking for it." Bai Qi, "I didn't expect to see us here." Hong Tailong. The 5 of them trembled and exclaimed in unison. Bai Qi was even more shocked as he said, "You're not dead yet?" Although the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress knew Yu Qianshou, they didn't know Hong Tailong. Seeing how shocked Bai Qi and the others were, in addition to Hong Tailong's tone, the couple instantly felt that something was amiss. Hong Tailong laughed loudly and said, "What a joke! What can a mere spirit-severing smoke do to me? Bai Qi, you probably didn't expect to see me again even in your dreams. Where is Jean Tyron? Let's settle the score today." Bai Qi suddenly turned around and looked at the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress coldly. "You 2 betrayed me?" A murderous intent appeared on his face. The couple hurriedly waved their hands and explained, "Emperor of the Underworld, you've misunderstood. Why would we betray you?" "Then how did they know I was here?" Bai Qi shouted sternly. The Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers and the other 3 also looked at the couple with murderous intent. The Snow Emperor immediately smiled bitterly at Yu Qianshou and said, "Yu Qianshou, why didn't you come earlier or later? Why did you come at this time? My husband and I can't even explain ourselves." Yu Qianshou was here to exchange for the Xian Ming soul refining technique. How could he let anything happen to the couple? He immediately laughed harshly and said, "Bai Qi, it really has nothing to do with them. I know them and came to visit them when I was passing by. I didn't expect to see you here. You heartless bastard. You actually dared to collude with that bastard Yan Zhuixing to kill me? Today it's time to settle the score." Actually, there was no need to explain. Bai Qi was just angry for a moment. Thinking about the shocked reactions of Hong Tailong and Yu Qianqiu, they obviously didn't expect to see him here. He immediately laughed coldly and said, "With just the two of you?" His gaze swept around as if he was worried that someone else would appear. The silver-armored soldier brandished his halberd, the purple-armored soldier brandished his scythe, the blue-armored soldier brandished his blue bow and arrow, and the red-armored soldier loosened his grip on the red-armored soldier's red chain. The four of them immediately stood in a straight line on either side of the battlefield. The Snow Empress and her husband smiled bitterly. It was obvious that the red old man wasn't someone to be trifled with. If the two groups fought, the Ice Palace would probably be destroyed. The Snow Empress gave a look to the Snow Empress, and the Snow Empress left hurriedly. It was more important to protect her unconscious daughter. With this, Yu Qianqiu took out the golden heaven and earth splitting arrow and stabbed it into the icy ground in front of him. Everyone's eyes turned cold at the same time. A cold smile gradually appeared on the corner of Bai Qi's mouth, and he said, "The heaven and earth splitting arrow is in your hands. It seems like the Myriad Swords Demon Lord is really dead. You scared me." It would have been fine if Bai Qi didn't mention the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. The moment Bai Qi mentioned the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, Hong Tailong immediately let out a wild roar and charged over. Bai Qi turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky, and Hong Tailong chased after him. The sky rumbled and a white figure and a red figure entangled with each other. The two of them directly engaged in a fierce battle. The heaven and earth splitting arrow on the icy cliff instantly exploded into tens of thousands of divine arrows, and they shot toward the four netherworld generals like a torrential rain. Yu Qianqiu was now extremely courageous, and he dared to take the initiative to fight the four netherworld generals head-on. As expected, he didn't panic because he had the goods in his hands. Reckless fellow. The Silver Armor Army's cold laughter was still reverberating, but the four of them had already teleported and disappeared from their original spots. The attacks of the tens of thousands of divine swords immediately missed. It was unknown when the Silver Armor Army, the Red Armor Army, and the Purple Armor Army had appeared behind Yu Qianqiu, and they surrounded him. All of them had cold smiles on their faces, and the shadow of the halberd filled the sky. The shadow of the death god's scythe swept across Yu Qianqiu's waist, and the shadow of the red chain lashed out. With the cultivation of these three people, if Yu Qianqiu was hit by any one of them, he would immediately have to say goodbye to this world. Especially since the Blue Armor Army in the sky had already drawn their soul-slaying bows. If Yu Qianqiu was lucky enough to escape, the soul-slaying bows would immediately teach him a lesson. Asterisk boom asterisk the tens of thousands of divine swords all shot into the enormous icy mountain. The icy mountain shook and countless cracks appeared on it. The Snow Empress directly dove into the ice on the ground to hide. At almost the same time that the four of them disappeared, Yu Qianqiu let out a furious roar, and his entire body exploded with a ferocious seven-colored flame. In an instant, it covered a radius of 1,000 meters. A ray of seven-colored light that illuminated the heaven and earth was like a resplendent pearl, blooming with gorgeous colors in the vast snowy mountain. Bai Qi, who was fighting fiercely with Hong Tailong, was already quite shocked. He actually discovered that Hong Tailong's cultivation was far stronger than before. Because he didn't know that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch had used the Divine Dragon Empowerment technique to return half of Hong Tailong's cultivation to him before he died, he didn't have the time to notice that Hong Tailong had already made the first move. In addition, Hong Tailong's dragon body, which belonged to the dragon race, was extremely resistant to attacks. He actually withstood the black light shot out by the obsidian light mirror without caring about anything else. He only attacked without defending, completely throwing caution to the wind. It was as if he was fighting with his life on the line. Bai Qi really couldn't endure his opponent's ferocious attacks. Just when Bai Qi was preparing to endure a little longer and wait for the Silver Armor Army and the other three to kill Yu Qianqiu, they would come over to help relieve the pressure on Bai Qi. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of the huge seven-colored flame blossoming below, and immediately cried out in surprise, "True Samadhi fire!" Taking advantage of Bai Qi's daze, Hong Tailong seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. He opened his mouth and two rays of golden light shot out. Two dragon binding chains, one bound Bai Qi's legs and the other bound his upper body. In the blink of an eye, Bai Qi was tied up tightly. No matter how hard Bai Qi struggled, he couldn't escape. Bai Qi was instantly scared out of his wits. Hong Tailong angrily shouted, "Violent dragon fist!" Countless monstrous fist shadows gathered at one point and violently smashed onto Bai Qi's body. Bai Qi couldn't even let out a scream as he violently vomited blood. Boom! A huge deep pit was formed on the vast snowy ground. Hong Tai-long rushed into the deep pit on the ground and didn't stop there. True Samadhi fire. The Silver Armor Army and the other three cried out in surprise before Bai Qi. They were caught off guard and were engulfed by the exploding seven-colored flame. The Blue Armor Heavenly Soldier had his bow drawn in the air, and since he was standing a little further away, he was able to dodge the attack with instantaneous movement. However, the Silver Armor Army and the other two who attacked Bai Qi were unlucky. They repeatedly teleported to avoid the flames that were chasing after them. After much difficulty, they finally escaped the flames that were chasing after them. However, they discovered that the weapons they attacked were stained with true Samadhi fire. This true fire could refine anything. Once it was stained, it would be a huge problem. They couldn't extinguish it no matter how hard they tried. They immediately threw away their weapons without hesitation, and the three treasures became useless on the spot. Chapter 1178. The iceberg where the ice palace was located melted instantly, not into water but into steam. Wherever the true Samadhi fire reached and even further away, was filled with smoke and mist. The blue-armored celestial soldier who had just fled immediately noticed Bai Qi's terrible condition. He cried out in grief, "Emperor of Netherworld." He turned around and shot the soul-slaying arrow at Hong Tai-long, who was beating Bai Qi. Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be seen amidst the rapidly dispersing mist and the colorful flame. But suddenly Yu Qianqiu's furious roar rang out, "Kill!" Tens of thousands of golden specks of light shot out from the blazing flames, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. In order to save the Emperor of the Underworld, the blue-armored celestial soldiers who had drawn their bows and shot arrows furiously didn't care about their own lives. Instead of dodging the rain-like attacks of the divine swords, they braced themselves and turned around to shoot the arrow at Hong Tai-long. As soon as the arrow was shot out, a dozen indestructible golden light specks pierced through his body, almost turning him into a sieve. The soul-slaying bow in his hand was cut into a few pieces by the rapidly piercing divine swords, making a buzzing noise as the bowstring was broken. Tens of blood spurted out from the blue-armored celestial soldier's body. Although he tried to choke back something with a reluctant expression, he still choked out a mouthful of blood. His head tilted to one side and he fell straight down to the snowland below. Silver-armored celestial soldier and his two companions, who had hastily dodged the divine swords, turned around and saw this scene. Immediately they let out a deafening howl, "Celestial army!" At this moment Hong Tai-long dashed out from the deep crater with a bloody man in his hand. The soul-slaying arrow brushed past his shoulder. Boom! The ground shook and the snowland cracked. The colorful flame covering 1,000 meters on the snowland shrank rapidly, and a man made of fire dashed out. Behind him, tens of thousands of golden light specks circled like a shoal of fish in the ocean. Hong Tai-long carried Bai Qi, who was already on the verge of death. His white clothes dyed in blood, and was still tightly bound by the dragon-binding rope. He flashed to Yu Qianqiu's side, handed him over and said, "Take him, I've already sealed his cultivation." Then he turned to look at the three dumbfounded people in the distance and sneered, "Leave those three fellows who helped the evildoer to me." Yu Qianqiu retracted his true Samadhi fire and reached out to grab the dragon-binding rope. He looked coldly at Bai Qi, who was beaten up beyond recognition, and casually lifted him up. He wouldn't have the slightest bit of sympathy for him. This was a life-and-death battle. If he lost today, his ending wouldn't be any better. Other than death, they might even hand him over to Yan Zhuixing. That was why it was said that showing mercy to the enemy was equivalent to committing suicide. "Wait!" Yu Qianqiu called out to Hong Tai-long. His eyes narrowed as he swept a glance at the three people in the distance. He felt a little strange in his heart. If the three of them had split up and fled, Hong Tai-long might not have been able to capture all of them. It would already be good if he could capture two of them. However, the three of them did not flee. Instead, they were looking at him with grief and indignation. Hong Tai-long looked at him in confusion and asked, "Are we going to let them go?" Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to him. He stretched out his other hand and a divine sword flashed into his hand. He placed the sword on Bai Qi's neck expressionlessly and shouted at the three people, "If anyone dares to flee, I will immediately cut off his head. If you don't want him to die, then obediently surrender. I can consider letting you guys live." "No." Hong Tai-long roared angrily, "I can let them go, but he must die." He pointed his finger at Bai Qi. From the looks of it, he still held a grudge against Yi Tiankong. "Why don't I hand him over to you and you can do whatever you want to do?" After you're done you can go back to your hometown and I'll go do my own thing. From now on, we won't have anything to do with each other? Yu Qianzhou looked at him and sneered. Hong Tailong clenched his fists tightly and angrily turned his head away. Yu Qianzhou, you have to keep your word. The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers' sorrowful voice came from afar. I Yu Qianzhou am famous for being a man of my word. What I say is already set in stone. Have you ever heard of me, Yu Qianzhou, going back on my word? Yu Qianzhou grabbed Bai Qi and placed the sword on his neck. He shouted back, as long as you guys answer my questions honestly and promise to serve me from now on, I can let you guys go. The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers and the other two looked at each other with a bitter smile, then nodded in unison and slowly flew over. Yu Qianzhou tilted his head and said, Hong Tailong, go seal their cultivation bases. Seeing the three flying over, Bai Qi's eyes, which had already lost focus, once again lit up. His chest, which had almost been smashed, suddenly heaved up and down, and a large mouthful of blocked blood spurted out of his mouth. Staring at the three flying over with bloodshot eyes, he desperately roared in pain, Run! Run! Don't worry about me. Don't believe his nonsense. Hurry up and go. I beg you guys. Yu Qianzhou didn't stop Bai Qi from shouting. He pretended to be merciful to the three people. The three people looked at Bai Qi's pitiful appearance. Who could have imagined that the emperor of the underworld, who was so graceful in the underworld royal palace, would end up like this? The three men who were made of iron instantly burst into tears. They stubbornly shook their heads and refused. It was the first time in their lives that they refused the emperor of the underworld's command. They didn't expect it to be under such circumstances. The three people didn't leave. Instead they sped up and flew over. Bai Qi's face instantly swelled and tears of blood came out of his eyes. He screamed in pain, Don't come over. Run. His voice was so miserable that it was like a ghost being thrown into a pot of boiling oil. Originally Hong Tailong hated Bai Qi to the bone. However, when he saw that Bai Qi was willing to give up his only hope of survival for the sake of his subordinates, he could not help but be moved. He cast a deep look at Bai Qi, who was crying tears of blood, and teleported to the front of Silver Armor Army and the other two without any hesitation. With a lightning-fast move, he quickly sealed their cultivations and brought them over. Seeing that the situation was under control, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and put away the 10,000 swords as one. He carried Bai Qi, who was badly mutilated, and landed on the ice field and threw him to the ground. Hong Tailong also threw the three people to the ground. The three people climbed up and wanted to help Bai Qi, who was still being helped. However, their cultivation was sealed, and they couldn't help Bai Qi, who was weighed down by the dragon binding rope. They fell down one by one, climbed up one by one, and fell down one by one. At this moment, the ice mountain that the ice palace was built on had melted. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress, who had hidden far away, also came back. The Snow Empress was still carrying her unconscious daughter. The two of them were also frightened by the fierce battle, but Yu Qianzhou's true Samadhi fire attracted them. Once the battle ended, they immediately rushed back. They saw hope to save their daughter because Yu Qianzhou had promised them. Let him go. We have already stretched out our necks to be killed. You have already sealed his cultivation, why don't you let him go? The Silver Armor Army roared at Hong Tailong, Even if you want to kill him, there is no need to treat him like this. He was once the supreme emperor of the netherworld, and he has his own dignity. At least when the Myriad Swords Demon Lord died, no one humiliated him. The three people were really powerless to help Bai Qi up. Without their cultivation, the ice under their feet was slippery. There was no expression on Hong Tailong's face. For some unknown reason, he actually opened his mouth and swallowed the dragon binding rope that was binding Bai Qi back into his stomach. Without the weight of the dragon binding rope, Bai Qi choked out another mouthful of blood when the three people helped him up. He looked at the three people and shook his head with boundless grief and indignation. Why are you all so stupid? We have no value to him now. Do you all really think that he will let us go? We know that there is no way out. The Purple Armor Army suddenly laughed bitterly and said, "But we are already used to going through life and death with you. We have been like this for so many years. Moreover, all of our lives were saved by you. You have never let us down and you have always treated us well. How can we bear to leave you behind?" Bai Qi closed his eyes and tears of blood flowed out from his eyes. Suddenly, he opened his eyes angrily and tilted his head to look at Yu Qianzhou. He gritted his teeth and said, "Yu Qianzhou, what will make you let them go?" Yu Qianzhou looked at him coldly and didn't answer his question. Instead, he said indifferently, "Actually, before you attacked me that time, I didn't have any ill will towards you. I just don't understand. Could it be that just because Mu Yuanzi injured you, you're going to open the demon world and let all the beings of the three realms die with you?" Bai Chi's struggling body softened, and he lay in the arms of the silver armor army of 1,000 soldiers. He laughed wildly and said, "Why? I also want to know why. I once led my subordinates to risk their lives for the sake of all living beings in the three realms. I risked my life to seal the demon realm with King Jintai. For the sake of all living beings in the three realms, I've always suppressed Kim Tae and prevented him from acting recklessly. For so many years, I've always warned Kim Tae that if he dared to disturb the balance of the three realms, I would lead the heroes of the netherworld to beat him up. Otherwise, do you think that inhumane fellow would really treat everyone in the world as humans? Let me ask you, who has ever heard of the three realms not being in chaos for 100,000 years? But why? Bai Chi retorted angrily, "Why do I have to bear the retribution for Master Jin's evil deed of killing the entire Wu family? Why did Mu Yuanzi injure me instead of dealing with the main culprit? Why do all the beings in the three realms turn against me when I'm working for the welfare of the three realms? Not a single person, not even a single person stood out to speak for me. Since the entire world is filled with heartless people, if I don't see rivers of heartless people's blood flow, why should I live in sorrow? Why should I die in sorrow? Then let me tell you why. Because there is no why. No matter how good you think you are, it's all because you think you are. Everything is retribution. If you can't figure it out, you can slowly think about it in your next life." Yu Qianqiu said as he took out a divine sword. Hong Tailong was slightly startled. "Didn't you want to let him go? Why does it look like you want to kill me?" Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu and the silver armor army of 1,000 soldiers were negotiating terms because he didn't want to leave behind any future troubles that might suddenly pop up one day to take revenge. Thus, he purposely led the three of them to surrender so that they wouldn't slip through the net. To him, if he didn't kill a single one and let them all go, then he would be a good person. Since he was going to kill them, he would have to eliminate them completely. Moreover, Bai Chi was already a member of the Devil Dao. He had once sworn to the heavens at the 1,000-mile lake that he would exterminate the Devil Dao and sacrifice all living beings in the demon domain. Chapter 1179. Right at this moment, the Snow Empress suddenly flashed over. She braced herself and cupped her hands with a bitter smile. "I know you want the Shenming soul refining technique. If you let go of the Emperor of the Underworld, I am willing to give it to you." The Snow Empress, who was carrying Shui Linglong, looked at them worriedly. She was afraid that her husband had angered Yu Qianqiu. After all, Hong Tailong and Yu Qianqiu were very powerful, especially Yu Qianqiu's Samadhi True Fire, which was the nemesis of the couple's cultivation method. More importantly, she was afraid that angering Yu Qianqiu would mean giving up the chance to cure her daughter. However, they were indebted to Bai Chi. Although she felt uncomfortable holding back some words, she couldn't say them out loud. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the couple, then slowly raised the divine sword in his hand and gently caressed the glowing edge of the sword. "Snow Emperor, we had an agreement. I saved your daughter's life, and you gave me the Shenming soul refining technique in exchange. Now you want to use it to exchange for Bai Chi's life. You better think carefully. The Shenming soul refining technique can only exchange for one person's life. Whether it is Bai Chi or your daughter, it's up to you." The Snow Emperor lowered his head solemnly. The Snow Empress looked at her daughter in her arms, then at her husband, her face full of anxiety. Bai Chi struggled for a while and the three understood and helped him up. Facing the Snow Emperor, Bai Chi was very gratified and nodded, "I appreciate Brother Snow's righteousness. With Brother Snow's words, I can die without regrets. My friendship with Brother Snow was not in vain. However, the four of us are destined to live and die together today. I will not live alone or it will be worse than death. So, please don't interfere in this matter. This has nothing to do with you and your wife." Emperor of the Underworld. The Snow Emperor wanted to say something, but Bai Chi had already turned to look at Yu Qianqiu, who was ignoring him, and sighed, "I didn't expect this." Yu Qianqiu, who didn't even dare to speak loudly in front of me, was now in control of my life and death. It seems that the Saintess is indeed a prophet. I had already vaguely figured out some of it, but in the end I still made a mistake. I can't blame others for my fate. You're right, everything is retribution. Netherworld Saintess? Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and lowered the sword in his hand. He tilted his head and asked, "She told you about me?" A bitter smile appeared on Bai Chi's bloody face, and his eyes became blurry. He recalled the conversation he had with the underworld saintess in the small courtyard of the dark royal palace. He closed his eyes slightly and said, "You Qianqiu, back then I wanted to kill you first. Killing me today is my retribution. However, I treated you well back then. Promise me one thing." Yu Qianqiu frowned and said faintly, "Let's hear it first." Now that things had come to this, he wouldn't give in so easily. A warm expression appeared on Bai Qi's face as he said, "Don't let the news of my death spread. That's all I want." Yu Qianqiu was startled. He asked with some surprise, "You're already dead, yet you still care about the waves behind you. I want to know why. Is it worth it for me to promise you?" Wan Ling's figure appeared in Bai Qi's mind. He had protected the entire 10,000 holy palace from the Demon King 3 nights. After rescuing Wan Ling, he and Wan Ling had an intimate time together. When they parted, he had said that he would come back to pick her up after finishing his business. Who would have thought that it would be an eternal farewell? He let out a soft sigh and closed his eyes as he replied, "If she doesn't know that I'm dead, she will naturally live on. I have nothing left for her. The only thing I can give her now is to give her the hope to live on." Everyone else was confused, but Yu Qianqiu seemed to be deep in thought. He had already linked it to Wan Ling. He paused and said, "I can promise you this. I originally wanted to use the Xianming soul refining technique to refine you all into profound weapons. As you said, on account of the kindness you have shown me, I will give the 4 of you a quick death. From now on, the grudges between us will be resolved, and we will not owe each other anything." As soon as he finished speaking, a golden light flashed in his hand. With 4 pu-pu sounds, 4 heads bounced up and fell to the ground. Warm blood spurted out from their mouths. The 4 corpses fell to the ground and twitched for a while before they stopped moving. The blood that flowed out from the severed heads quickly solidified on the icy ground. Hong Tai Long looked at Yu Qianqiu as he silently put away the divine sword in his hand. Previously he had thought that he would let them go. He didn't expect that he would not leave a single one alive. Hong Tai Long wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. The Snow Empress and her husband looked at Bai Qi's corpse dumbfoundedly. Suddenly, a ball of 7-colored flames swept across, and there was nothing left on the ground. Even the blood had turned into ashes. Yu Qianqiu turned around and walked towards the husband and wife. He stopped in front of the Snow Empress who was carrying Shui Linglong, and said indifferently, "Snow Empress, I have always remembered the promise I made in the past. Today I have come to fulfill it." He stretched out his 5 claws and grabbed towards Shui Linglong. Not long after, a strand of 7-colored flame that was not much thicker than a strand of hair emerged from Shui Linglong's body. It was this little fellow that caused the Snow Empress and her husband to be helpless even with all their efforts. That strand of flame drilled into Yu Qianqiu's palm. Shui Linglong, who was still unconscious, let out a soft moan. Her body that was being carried moved slightly, and the sickly redness on her cheeks gradually disappeared. The husband and wife looked at their daughter who was recovering quickly, but they didn't feel the slightest bit happy. The Snow Empress raised her head and saw that Yu Qianqiu was staring at her with a burning gaze. She couldn't help but smile bitterly and shake her head. She took out a jade archive and quickly inserted something into it, then flicked it out. Yu Qianqiu casually caught the jade archive and examined it. After thinking for a long time, he nodded slightly and said, "So that's how it is. I understand now." The jade archive was immediately crushed into pieces. In fact, the Xianming soul refining technique wasn't a technique that required a large amount of time to practice. It was a technique that condensed all of the opponent's cultivation into the essence of the technique and used it. It required a spiritual object that was connected to the user so that the user could control it. No matter what type of spiritual object was used, the user would need the same type as the medium to unleash its power. This was the reason why the Snow Empress said that Yu Qianqiu couldn't practice without absorbing the fire spirit. After understanding the secret of the Xianming soul refining technique, Yu Qianqiu was confident that he could use it on the 5 elements of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to swallow all 5 spirits of heaven and earth. The Snow Empress would never have imagined that Yu Qianqiu had mastered all 5 elements of the technique. This was also the reason why Yu Qianqiu was so interested in the Xianming soul refining technique. As long as he mastered it, he would be able to summon an almost unkillable dark soldier in any terrain in the future. The Snow Empress and her husband didn't have anything to be happy about when their daughter's worries were resolved. They held their daughter and left with flagging interest. Now that the ice palace was destroyed, they suffered a great loss. The ice soul mysterious ice, which was refined by many experts, was destroyed by Yuchencho's Samadhi true fire. But they didn't say anything and left. They wanted to find a suitable place to rebuild the ice palace in the snowy mountain. After today's scene they saw Yuchencho's ruthlessness. It was hard for them, who had always been aloof from worldly affairs, to accept it. They probably didn't want to have anything to do with Yuchencho anymore. At least in their opinion, Bai Qi was much more affectionate and righteous. Yuchencho stood silently on the ice field and watched the couple leave. He stood for a long time in the howling cold wind. After a long time he looked up at the dark night sky and sighed. I thought I would become friends with them, but I knew it was impossible when I decided to kill Bai Qi. All these years, in order to do some things, I gained a lot, but I also lost too many precious things. What is the most precious? The human heart is the most precious. The people I was familiar with left me one by one. Some died, some left, and there's no turning back. Maybe when I gain more, I will also lose more. Hong Tailong also couldn't accept the fact that he killed Bai Qi and the other 3 people. Although he was the one who shouted the loudest to kill Bai Qi, after hearing Yuchencho's sigh, he seemed to understand his helplessness. After all, which person didn't have a story behind them? Everyone had been honest before, and maybe everyone had a touching story. But this was a life and death cultivation. There was more than one person like Bai Qi in the world, who could carry so many burdens on their shoulders. If they didn't get rid of them quickly, there would only be more and more burdens and nothing could be done. Just as Hong Tailong was about to say a few words of consolation, he discovered that Yuchencho took a deep breath and became spirited again. He immediately came back to life from his loneliness and disappeared in a flash. His recovery speed was too fast. It was as if he was a completely different person, as if nothing had happened earlier. After Yuchencho searched around the icy plains, he found Bai Qi's treasure, the obsidian underworld light mirror. He tried to control it, but discovered that it was impervious to fire and water. Even his divine sense couldn't penetrate it. It seemed like there was no possibility for him to control it. Hong Tailong flashed to his side and sneered, "Don't try any more. The obsidian underworld light mirror is the symbol of the netherworld's supreme ruler. Other than meditation cultivators, no one from the outside world is able to control it." There's such a strange thing? Yuchencho flipped it around and looked at it. Then he put it away with some regret. This thing could communicate with each other through a video call. It was a pity that he couldn't use such a high-grade treasure. Where should we go now? To sweep across the demonic path's army in the netherworld, or to slaughter in the immortal realm? Hong Tailong rubbed his palms together. He couldn't wait to prove to the 3 realms that he, Hong Tailong, had returned. Yuchencho lowered his head and calculated for a while. He muttered to himself, "Looking at the time, it's about time. I wonder if that fellow Xinyu will keep his promise." Then he suddenly raised his head and said, "My master doesn't know about the human realm being sealed. I want to report to him first." "Your master? Where?" Hong Tailong was stunned. Yuchencho had already waved his hand, and the 2 of them disappeared from where they stood. By the netherworld river beside the myriad heavens boundary barrier, the 2 of them appeared. Hong Tailong quickly looked around and asked hesitantly, "This is? You're finally here?" A woman's clear voice rang out. The 2 of them looked at the other side of the river. The netherworld saintess slowly walked out from the ground. It seemed like she had opened up an underground space for herself. Hong Tailong was a little surprised and wanted to ask, "Is this your master?" Yuchencho was also a little surprised as he asked, "Why are you here?" Chapter 1180. However, what surprised him even more was that Xinyu also walked out of the cave, smiled awkwardly at him and curiously looked at Hong Tailong. Then he flew over with the underworld saintess. Seeing that Xinyu kept his promise, Yuchencho was relieved, but he was a little puzzled as to why the 2 of them were together. He couldn't help but ask, "Why are you 2 together?" Xinyu said embarrassedly, "I came here a few days in advance to wait for you. Who knew that I would also meet Miss Xian here, so we waited for you here together." "Taishu Xian is also waiting for me? Could it be that her ability to predict the future had reached such a level? Or is it a coincidence?" Just as Yuchencho showed some doubts on his face, Taishu Xian, whose face was covered with a black veil, suddenly sighed faintly and asked, "You really came here? In that case, Bai Qi didn't escape the calamity after all." Hong Tailong, who was already confused, was even more puzzled. The 2 of them came here in the blink of an eye. How did she know that Bai Qi had encountered a calamity? Yuchencho didn't dare to underestimate her. He had a deeper understanding of this woman's divine foresight. However, because he had promised Bai Qi not to leak the news that he was dead, a confused look appeared on his face as he asked, "What do you mean Bai Qi didn't escape the calamity? What happened to Bai Qi?" Hong Tailong immediately turned his head and rolled his eyes. Tai Shu Xian looked deeply at Yu Qianzhou and shook his head slightly. "Bai Qi and I were friends and I couldn't bear to see him suffer a tragedy. I originally wanted him to use you to defy the heavens and change his fate. I also thought that he understood. Now it seems that the two of you didn't get along after all. It's really hard to defy the heavens' will." Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered. He wanted to say something but hesitated for a while. In the end he still said with a blank look, "What do you mean? Why don't I understand?" Tai Shu Xian saw that he was deliberately acting dumb, so he didn't linger on this topic. He quietly turned around and said, "I have been waiting for you here for a long time. Since you want to go inside the celestial boundary, why don't we go together?" "What? The celestial barrier of the mausoleum of the gods?" Hong Tailong looked around in shock, while Yu Qianzhou glanced at Xin Yu meaningfully as if he was asking, "Did you say that?" Feeling guilty, Jiu Yu turned around and flashed into the river. He transformed into a giant clam and opened his shell to wait for the three of them to come in. Tai Shu Xian was the first to enter in a flash, followed by Yu Qianzhou. Hong Tailong still had a shocked expression on his face as he glanced left and right before following behind them. The huge clamshell closed up, and it quickly swam upstream in the Netherworld River. When the few of them came out of the clamshell again, they had already arrived at the cliff within the boundary of all heavens. Hong Tailong stared at the huge moon with his mouth agape. Tai Shu Xian seemed a little excited to return to this place. He didn't greet the crowd and immediately flew in the direction of his home. Yu Qianzhou took out a flying shuttle and let Hong Tailong drive it. He brought along Jiu Yu and caught up with Tai Shu Xian in the blink of an eye. They carried her and quickly disappeared into the distance. When they arrived at the small courtyard on the monster-like mountain, Tai Shu Xian couldn't wait any longer and flashed down. White-haired Grandma Yen walked out of the house and saw her. She immediately called out with a trembling voice, "Little Xian." Tai Shu Xian quickly walked over and knelt down on the spot. She hugged Grandma Yan's leg and cried, "Grandma, Xianer is back." After Grandma Yen helped her up and checked on her, the two of them hugged each other and cried. As they cried, they asked each other something and completely ignored the three people who walked in after them. After a long while, the two women who looked like a grandparent and granddaughter finally stopped crying. When Grandma Yen saw Yu Qianzhou, she wiped her tears and let go of Tai Shu Xian. She walked to him and bowed, "Yu Qianzhou, this old woman thanks you." She was thanking him for bringing back Tai Shu Xian who had disappeared for so many years. "You can't do that." Yu Qianzhou hurriedly held her. Grandma Yen didn't stand on ceremony. She pulled his hand and led him into the house. She then waved at the other two people and said, "Come in, come in, come in, everyone come in." "Grandma Yen, you don't have to be so polite." Yu Qianzhou persuaded her and said seriously, "I still have something to do, so I won't disturb you this time. I'll visit Grandma next time." He suddenly thought of something and asked respectfully, "By the way, Grandma, have you heard any news about my master recently?" Hong Tailong's ears pricked up. He looked at Yu Qianzhou with a stunned expression and pondered in his heart. Could this guy's master be in the mausoleum of the god of sin? "Your master?" Grandma Yen was also stunned. Then she came to a sudden realization and said, "You're asking about that green-robed madman, right?" "Ah." Yu Qianzhou's expression twitched. The so-called green-robed madman shouldn't be anyone else. He then coughed dryly and said, "From what Grandma said, you seem to have news about my master?" Grandma Yen also felt that her choice of words was a little inappropriate, but she still frowned and nodded with a solemn expression. She said, "I do know, but you must not let the others here know that he is your master. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will bring you trouble." Yu Qianzhou's expression twitched again. He guessed that the old man had done something that angered the heavens and the people again. So he asked weakly, "Grandma, can you explain it clearly? What exactly happened?" Sigh. Grandma Yen sighed and shook her head. She said, "Your master killed old man Meng? That's not all. He provoked the other tomb guards one after another. As a result, many of them were angered by him. So, more than 100 of them joined forces and finally beat him up until he was seriously injured. Who knew that after he escaped into the boundary of heavens to recuperate, he would not stop. After he came out, he killed 60 to 70 minor god-level cultivators in a row. Dozens of them were seriously injured and luckily escaped with their lives. In the end, A tomb guard with the cultivation of an early-stage great god was alarmed. He and your master fought fiercely for a day and a night. In the end, the two of them were evenly matched. Both of them were seriously injured and had to retreat. Your master has not come out to cause trouble for a long time. He has been recuperating in the boundary of heavens. Although everyone can see him, they can't break into the boundary of heavens. So they can't do anything to him. Yuchencho was speechless for a while. He realized that the old man was getting more and more reckless. He dared to challenge a group of god-level experts alone. Was it fun to be seriously injured for no reason? It was simply unreasonable. The others were also speechless. After the shock, Taishu Xian's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Xinyu seemed to have heard of this before. He was speechless. Hong Tailong looked at Yuchencho as if he was looking at a monster. Never in his dreams would he have thought that Yuchencho had such an awesome master. Grandma Yen paused for a while and smiled bitterly. Now, the people in the cemetery of the God of Tombs are in a state of panic because of your master. No one knows when he will come out to cause trouble again. Everyone is spreading the news, hoping to unite to deal with your master. Sigh. Back then, if it wasn't for last Xian who divined for me and told me not to get involved in the matters outside, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape from your master's hands. I just don't understand. What is your master trying to do? Everyone here is a group of people who stand aloof from worldly affairs. Why would he want to disturb the peace here? No one is provoking him. That, he. Yuchencho blushed with shame. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "There's something wrong with the old man's head. Don't lower yourself to his level." Grandma Yen immediately said angrily, "Who wants to lower themselves to his level? We really don't want to lower ourselves to his level, and we can't wait to stay away from him. But he insisted on coming to our door, and we can't leave the cemetery of the God of Tombs. What do you want us to do?" Yuchencho also smiled bitterly. The old man was still resolutely striving for a higher and stronger goal. It seemed that he had never wavered in that thought. Yuchencho didn't know what to say. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Taishu Xian immediately came forward to resolve it. "Grandma, I want to pay my respects to Father and Grandfather Moon God." Grandma Yen glanced at her and understood what she was thinking. She didn't linger on this topic anymore. She shook her head and walked out with the help of Taishu Xian. "Ahem. Since they are elders, I should pay my respects." Yuchencho followed out with some guilt. Then he cursed in his heart. "Damn it. I didn't do the wicked things that the old man did. Why should I feel guilty?" Hong Tailong and Xinyu looked at each other and followed out. In front of the tombs of Taishu Zheng and the moon god, Taishu Xian knelt down and kowtowed sincerely. He was even muttering something. Yuchencho bowed repeatedly to the tombstones. Xinyu followed suit. Hong Tailong crossed his arms and followed suit. Taishu Zheng didn't know who it was. When he saw the tomb of the moon god, he muttered, "So the moon god is buried here too." Grandma Yin saw that he was being disrespectful and naturally couldn't stand it. But when she realized that she couldn't see through his cultivation, she couldn't help but mock. "Do you know my husband?" Hong Tailong turned around and was stunned. After he reacted, he said disapprovingly, "The moon god. I heard of him when I was in the divine realm." "You are?" Grandma Yen was stunned. She glanced at them and asked in confusion, "You are also from the divine realm? Why haven't I seen you before? May I know your name?" She mistakenly thought that Hong Tailong was a tomb guard in the divine tomb cemetery. "It's not strange that you haven't seen me before." Hong Tailong revealed a normal expression and said, "I, Hong Tailong, am a nobody in the dragon clan. I have never made a name for myself in the divine realm. It's normal that we haven't seen each other." "You are from the dragon clan?" Grandma Yen looked at him in surprise as if she couldn't believe it. Just as she was about to ask again, she saw Hong Tailong casually walking to the front of the huge grave mound. He caressed the dark red crystals that formed the grave mound and said, "It is said that as long as the corpse of the person buried in the blood jade red crystals is intact, his cultivation and corpse can be maintained. At the same time, the blood jade red crystals can absorb the essence of the moon and condense the dead soul. When the time is right, the dead can be resurrected. This is also the reason why people in the divine realm fight to be buried in the divine tomb cemetery. I wonder if it's true?" Grandma Yen was already annoyed by his rude behavior. Yuchencho glanced at her and quickly pulled Hong Tailong away to stop him from carelessly touching the grave mound. Then he pulled Xinyu along and the three of them bid farewell to Grandma Yen. Grandma Yen nodded unhappily. She didn't say any polite words and let the three of them leave. Chapter 1181. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Hong Tai-long, who was on the rapidly flying shuttle, was also somewhat unhappy. He could also tell that Grandma Yin wasn't very fond of him. He coldly snorted at Yu Qianqiu. Why are you afraid of her? She's no match for me with her cultivation. You think you're right? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Respect the dead. If you don't put her in your eyes, she didn't offend you. Why did you have to touch her grave? No one would be happy. Do I, a dragon, have to kneel and kowtow to her family's dead? Hong Tai-long waved his hand disdainfully and continued to steer his flying shuttle. Suddenly he turned around and sneered, I understand. You're afraid that you'll be implicated by your master's troubles. You're afraid that she'll be unhappy and expose your identity, right? Don't talk about useless things. Yu Qianqiu snorted. He crossed his arms and rubbed his chin, thinking about something. The expression on his face was somewhat strange. Suddenly he looked at Hong Tai-long with a strange gaze and said, Let me ask you, you said that as long as the corpses of the dead are intact, they can maintain their cultivation. Is that true? I don't know if it's true, but that's what I've heard in the divine realm. However, I've never heard of anyone being resurrected, so I'm not sure. Why are you interested in this? Do you also want to be buried in? Hong Tai-long's voice paused and his body suddenly trembled. He turned around and exclaimed in shock, Could it be that you want to use the Shenming soul refining technique too? He glanced at Xinyu and swallowed his words. He still didn't know how close this Xinyu fellow was to Yu Qianqiu, and there were some things that he couldn't let him know. However, Yu Qianqiu nodded thoughtfully and said, If his cultivation really hasn't dissipated, I wonder if it's been too long since he died. Is there any use in using the Shenming soul refining technique? Hong Tai-long's eyes flickered as he swept his gaze across his surroundings. He was a little excited as he chuckled. Do you want to give it a try? He seemed to be searching for a target. Xinyu looked at the two of them in confusion. He didn't know what they were talking about, but his instincts told him that they were up to no good. At that moment, the flying shuttle arrived above the tomb that old man Meng had been guarding. The ground was full of potholes as if an interstellar war had taken place. However, the dark red crystal tomb was still there. Hong Tai-long winked at Yu Qianqiu and gestured at the grave below. Yu Qianqiu immediately had a look of disdain on his face. Looking at this old fellow's character, he must have done a lot of good things with Yi Tiankong back then. I'm not in the mood for this right now. Let's go to the edge of the all-celestial boundary and see how my master is doing, said Yu Qianqiu as he pointed forward. All right. We'll talk about it when we get back. Hong Tai-long chuckled as if he was very interested in being a thief. He forgot about the dignity of the dragon race and flew away on the flying shuttle. The flying shuttle soon arrived at the edge of the all-celestial boundary. Who knew that just as it approached, someone would shout, Who is it? Suddenly, 3 people descended from the sky, forming a triangle around the flying shuttle. Hong Tai-long's gaze swept over the 3 people, and his pupils shrank slightly. He discovered that he could not see through the cultivation of these 3 people. They were clearly higher than him. Yu Qianqiu knew that they had encountered an expert when he saw Hong Tai-long's expression. He quickly cupped his fists at the 3 and said with a smile, We heard that someone is doing evil here, so we came here to see which madman has the guts to do so. The 3 of them turned a deaf ear to his words. Their gazes were fixed on Hong Tai-long as they looked at each other in disbelief. After a long while, one of them asked in bewilderment, You're from the dragon race? The 3 of them had a higher cultivation than Hong Tai-long, so they could see through Hong Tai-long's true form. Can't I? Hong Tai-long shouted with an imposing manner, I heard that someone is doing evil here. I came here to investigate. Could it be that you are trying to stop me? So it's the dragon race's emissary. The 3 of them mistook Hong Tai-long as an emissary sent by the dragon race. They bowed and greeted him. The person who answered earlier even explained to Hong Tai-long respectfully, There is indeed a madman doing evil here. He is inside the all-celestial boundary ahead. Emissary, please report back to Great Coiling Dragon God as soon as possible and eliminate this person. Let me there. Hong Tai-long pointed at Hong Tai-long and put on airs. The 3 of them immediately led the way. Yu Qianqiu looked at Hong Tai-long with a disgusted expression. He was even more certain that this old fellow must have done many bad things in the past. After arriving at their destination, the group stood at the edge of the transverse cliff. The person who answered earlier waved his hand and pointed into the darkness ahead. Emissary, please look. That person is right there. Yu Qianqiu and the others looked in the direction he pointed. In the void not too far away, Bai Changchun was quietly floating there in his green robe. His eyes were closed and his brows were drooping. He was motionless like a statue. Golden arcs of light constantly flickered around his body. They either flew out of his body in complicated trajectories or entered his body in an ethereal manner. The golden arcs of light were constantly moving in and out of his body. No one knew what they were doing. Hong Tailong glanced at Yu Qianqiu. From his expression, he confirmed that it was his master. He suddenly shouted, "Hey! Who is doing evil here? Quickly report your name." "It's useless." The person who guided them shook his head and explained, "The all-celestial boundary isolates everything. He can't hear our voices at all. We also don't know when he will wake up and we can't go over either. So, this person is very strange. I don't know what method he used to hide in the all-celestial boundary. I'm afraid Emissary Dragon will have to report back to Great Coiling Dragon God before he can make a decision. We can't contact your master. What should we do?" Hong Tailong secretly transmitted his voice. Yu Qianqiu was also helpless. He said in the dark, "Forget it. Let's focus on our own matters first." Hong Tailong then said to the other three with a stern expression, "I know what to do. I will go back and report back now." The three quickly offered to send him off, but Hong Tailong rejected them. He drove the flying shuttle again and left with Yu Qianqiu and Xinyu. After watching them leave, one of them expressed doubt. "Why do I feel that this emissary dragon is a little strange? He actually brought two people with such shallow cultivation with him, and he even drove the flying shuttle himself. Do you think he might be an imposter?" Another person shook his head and said, "Why do you care so much? There's no doubt that he's a dragon. It's even more impossible for him to be an imposter. If he wasn't here on imperial orders, he wouldn't have been able to break through the all-celestial boundary. Besides, have you ever heard of a dragon daring to impersonate Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy?" As they were discussing, Hong Tailong, who had flown far away, suddenly turned around on the flying shuttle. He put his hands on Yu Qianqiu's shoulders and said with a trembling voice, "If the matter of me impersonating Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy gets out, you have to help me explain to Great Coiling Dragon God. I'm only impersonating him so that you can meet your master." "All right, I know." Yu Qianqiu pushed his hands away and said nonchalantly, "What's there to be afraid of? You didn't lie. You're Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy. Don't think too much. Stop there and we'll do our own things." Xinyu had been listening to the conversation between the two in bewilderment. Why did it involve Great Coiling Dragon God again? He felt that things were getting out of hand. He didn't know if following these two fellows was a blessing or a curse. Hong Tailong sighed and turned around. He thought to himself, "I'm afraid my time as an envoy has long expired." Not long after, the three of them returned to the sky above the lonely tomb. Hong Tailong looked around and made sure that there was no one around. He quickly put away the flying shuttle and the three of them landed in front of the tombstone. There were words on the tombstone. "Hong Hua Star Monarch. I've heard of this person. He's a member of the Light Ancient God clan. I think he's a late-stage great god." However, he fell when the demon god wreaked havoc in the divine realm. "I didn't expect him to be buried here." Hong Tailong nodded as he looked at the tombstone. "Ah, his surname is Hong just like yours." Yu Qianqiu teased. Hong Tailong was about to retort when he saw Yu Qianqiu lightly stomp his feet. The three of them immediately sank into the ground. Then the ground above them closed up again, blocking the bright moonlight. Hong Tailong couldn't help but shake his head. This guy really knew the earth elemental art. Meanwhile, Yu Qianqiu used the earth elemental art to sense the depth of the tomb. After diving down to a depth of 10 meters, he suddenly pointed with his finger. The soil in front of him parted, and a large hole appeared on the wall made of blood jade and red crystals. Immediately, a faint red light could be seen moving gently in front of him. Yu Qianqiu looked at it warily. He stepped aside to make way and said, "There's no danger in there, right?" Hong Tailong was speechless. He knew that this guy meant for him to go in and check first. He strode in and walked around. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he shouted, "Come in. It's fine." Yu Qianqiu then swaggered in while Xinyu followed behind him in fear. He realized that every time he followed Yu Qianqiu had to do some unimaginable and scary things. The space inside the tomb was not small, and the lighting was good. The entire tomb's walls and floor were made of blood jade red crystals. Strands of red light shone down from the blood jade red crystals on the ceiling. They formed a fan shape and focused on a corpse in the center. It was a man's corpse, and he was also lying on a long bed made of blood jade red crystals. Yu Qianqiu and Xinyu were still looking around, but Hong Tai Long was already at the side of the long bed, trying to touch the corpse on it. Shin Yu didn't dare to move. Yu Qianqiu walked over to take a look. The man's corpse had a goat-like beard and a serene expression. It was as if he was sleeping and he didn't look like a dead person at all. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but curiously poke his head over and asked, "What are you doing?" Hong Tai Long pinched open the man's mouth and peeked inside. He then opened the eyelids to take a look. Then he clapped his hands and said with a curious expression, "The corpse is actually soft. There's a piercing wound in his heart, but I can see that the original wound was even bigger. It's obviously healing at an extremely slow speed. It seems that the legend about the mausoleum of the god of sin is true. There might really be a possibility of resurrection. If you don't believe me, come and touch it." He pointed at the corpse on the long bed to Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 1182. Motherf asterisk Ker. I'm not as perverted as you. I've never had the hobby of touching corpses. Moreover, it's a corpse that has been dead for God knows how many years. How could you do it? Yu Qianqiu spat in disgust. He had seen enough of the corpse's disgusting actions. However, he still couldn't help but poke it a few times to see if it was real or fake. Finding that it really was soft, he couldn't help but pinch the corpse's arm. He coughed and pulled his hand back. I'm more concerned about how his cultivation base is preserved. The two stood in front of the corpse that had been dead for God knows how many years and chatted. They even touched each other. Jiuyu subconsciously looked around and felt extremely horrified. Can you not always say one thing but mean another? Hong Tai Long spat back. He then went straight to the point. Without giving Jiuyu a chance to refute, he said, his cultivation seems to have been damaged. I heard that Honghua Star Lord was a late-stage great god back then. Now he's only a mid-stage great god. Try and see if you can use it. What were these two guys trying to do? Jiuyu stared at the two people who had their backs to him surrounding the corpse. Middle-stage great god. It's enough, it's enough. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the entire corpse with a beaming smile on his face. Then he patted Hong Tai Long's chest with the back of his hand, hinting him to step aside. Then he circled around the long couch twice. No one knew what he was thinking, but he shook his head again and again. Suddenly, he waved his hand and a seven-colored flame enveloped the entire corpse. Then he closed his eyes and remained motionless. It was Xin Yu's first time seeing the seven-colored flame and he was shocked. The flame that covered the corpse slowly melted under his claws until it became a ball floating in the air. There was a layer of grayish-white human-shaped ashes on the long bed of blood jade and red crystals, which was obviously left behind after the corpse was cremated. Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes. There were two leaping flames in his eyes. He flipped his 5 claws that were spewing out 7-colored flames. The already shrunken fireball was held in his palm, and it kept shrinking. When all the 7-colored flames had entered his palm, a sparkling and translucent purple bead was quietly lying on his palm. There was a faint red light inside the purple bead. So, the bead for a god-level cultivation base is purple. Yu Qianqiu looked at the bead in his palm and said excitedly, "Success." Hong Tai Long flashed over to take a look. Xin Yu still did not understand what they were doing. You'll know once you try. Yu Qianqiu threw the bead in his hand and a 7-colored flame sprayed out from his palm. The purple bead spun in the 7-colored flame and quickly absorbed the flame. Gradually, a 3-meter-tall 7-colored flame man appeared. It looked like it was materializing. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. Yu Qianqiu retracted the flame in his palm and exclaimed as he looked into the sky, "Damn it! He absorbed almost half of the Samadhi true fire in my body. The Samadhi true fire that can cover a radius of 500 meters was condensed into this." Hong Tai Long and Xin Yu stared dumbfoundedly at the 3-meter-tall mighty fire man in the air. He was wearing a 7-colored fire armor and looked extremely lifelike. His pair of fiery golden eyes stared straight ahead without any emotion. The two of them could feel the terrifying power contained in this fire overlord's body. Wow! I Hong Tai Long have my eyes opened. Hong Tai Long's eyes lit up as he shook his head and exclaimed, "A flame man with Samadhi true fire as a body and a mid-stage god-level cultivation base. This thing is really scary." With a thought from Yu Qianqiu, the flame man teleported down and waved his palm like a knife across the long bed made of blood jade and red crystal. It was easily cut in half like a knife cutting through tofu. There wasn't even a sound. The 7-colored flame man suddenly raised his head and looked at Hong Tai Long. Hong Tai Long was shocked and immediately felt something was wrong. He flashed behind Yu Qianqiu and shouted angrily, You want to use me as an experiment? I'm warning you, don't make such a joke. You'll die. Yu Qianqiu chuckled. He did have such an idea, but since he had been seen through, it would hurt his feelings to scare him again. He raised his hand and opened his claw. The seven-colored flame man immediately dispersed into Samadhi true fire and was absorbed into Yu Qianqiu's body. Finally, the purple bead was in his hand. He looked at it admiringly before putting it away. Hong Tai Long walked out from behind him with lingering fear and asked, "What's this thing called?" "The fire of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth. It should be called Fire Soul Mystic Weapon." Yu Qianqiu smiled proudly. With such a treasure to protect him, he wouldn't have to fear anything in the three realms. Hong Tai Long clicked his tongue enviously and said, "That means there's still Water Soul Mystic Weapon, Gold Soul Mystic Weapon, Wood Soul Mystic Weapon, and Earth Soul Mystic Weapon? Theoretically it should be like this. Snow Emperor's one is called Ice Soul Mystic Weapon." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said with pity, "If I'm able to devour the other four great spirits, then coupled with the myriad of tombs within this mausoleum, I'll be able to refine the five-element dark weapons. Who in the three dimensions would be able to stop me then?" Jiuyu, who was at the side, was shocked. He understood everything now. He had seen the Ice Soul Mystic Ice of the Great Snowy Mountain. Obviously, Yu Qianqiu had obtained the secret method to refine mystic weapons from Snow Emperor. What shocked him the most was that Yu Qianqiu had set his sights on the 10 million divine tombs in the mausoleum of the God of Sin. If he succeeded, wouldn't he have to refine 10 million divine-level dark weapons? Not to mention the three realms, with so many divine-grade profound weapons, even in the God realm, they would be able to sweep through a region. Hong Tai Long rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "Didn't your master kill quite a few tomb guardians? You probably don't know that we'll find a few good tombs in other places and empty them. Back then, our coiling dragon ancestor killed the wind god of the 12 ancient gods. The body of the wind god is also buried here. That's a terrifying expert with the cultivation of a late-stage ancient god. Don't you want to refine him into a mystic weapon?" That wretched smile on his face was filled with the feeling of enticing people to commit a crime. It was obvious that he was very interested in stealing. No wonder he was in cahoots with the myriad swords demon monarch Yi Tiankong. One of the 12 ancient gods, late-stage ancient god. Yu Qianqiu and Xinyu both cried out in surprise. The former's eyes were even brighter. He had heard of the wind god's great name before. That was one of the top 12 experts since the creation of the world. If he could refine him into a mystic weapon, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the divine realm. Yu Qianqiu swallowed his saliva with difficulty. His expression suddenly froze and he asked suspiciously, "Hong Tai Long, the tomb of a figure like the wind god must be guarded by an expert. I wonder what their cultivation is like." The smile on Hong Tai Long's face froze and he said awkwardly, "I heard that the people guarding the tomb of the wind god are his left and right envoys. They are called Tianfeng and Difeng. Their cultivation had reached early stage ancient god a long time ago. I wonder what level their cultivation is now, hee. What are you laughing at?" Yu Qianqiu snorted and asked, "Digging the tomb of the wind god is no problem. But who can handle the two ancient god experts? You or me? Damn it. Even if you want to die, this is not the way to do it." Even Jiuyu couldn't help but roll his eyes at Hong Tai Long, hee. "Even if we can't dig the tomb of the wind god, we can still dig the tomb of others." Hong Tai Long didn't give up and said, "Now that you have a mid-stage Great God Fire Soul Mystic Weapon, you should be able to handle ordinary mid-stage Great God Tomb Guards. Even if you can't, you should be able to stall them. It's enough for you to dig the tomb. Think about it, for a tomb guard of a mid-stage Great God expert, the Tomb Master's cultivation is probably almost at the Ancient God level. You can get a few more Ancient God level mystic weapons and use them to deal with Tianfeng and Difeng. Won't you be able to dig the tomb of the Wind God in the end?" As he spoke, he even made a move to take drastic measures. Towards this immoral idea, Xinyu lowered his head and looked at the ground without any expression. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, nodded in agreement. "That makes sense. But I'm afraid it's not possible now." Hong Tai Long said unwillingly, "Why?" "It's very simple. First, the tomb guards here have already been alerted by my master. I'm afraid that they have already linked up. If we're not careful, we might run into their hands. So, my master messing around is equivalent to ruining our plans. Second, although this Fire Soul Mystic Weapon is powerful, it needs enough fire to boost its power. The true Samadhi fire stored in my body can only be used to scare people. It might be fine against ordinary experts, but it definitely can't support him to fight with a real expert. Otherwise, once he is defeated, he won't be able to revive in time. At that time we'll be in trouble. Jiuyu and I saw this with our own eyes at the Great Snowy Mountain. Third, with the terrain here, if we really want to do something, only the Earth Soul Mystic Weapon can unleash its full power. If I can devour the Earth Spirit, it'll be much safer. Earth Spirit? Hong Tai Long scratched his head and said gloomily, where are we going to find the Earth Spirit at this time? Yu Qianqiu laughed sinisterly and said, unfortunately, I've heard Demon King 3 Knights say that he has an Earth Spirit under him. If we want to find an Earth Spirit, I'm afraid we'll have to find trouble with Demon King 3 Knights. Also, I've long wanted to make a move on Jean Tai's Gold Spirit, but I haven't had the chance. Now is the time to do it together. Good. Hong Tai Long clapped his hands and praised, I'm also going to find Jean Tai to settle the score. Let's go and find him now. Yu Qianqiu nodded and turned to look at Jiuyu with a smile. Jiuyu, this celestial barrier is very deceitful. I'm embarrassed to trouble you to come and fetch us all the time. Why don't you come with us? That way it'll be convenient for everyone. What do you think? Jiuyu was speechless. He wanted to refuse, but was there any use in refusing? If you don't say anything, I'll take it as you agree. Yu Qianqiu directly made the decision for him. With a wave of his hand, the three of them instantly disappeared from the tomb. After the three of them returned to the underground base of the Divine Ruin Realm, Yu Qianqiu arranged for Jiuyu to stay in a karst cave deep in the base. Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng, and Bai Suzhen were all cultivating there. There was also underground water for Jiuyu, the muscle spirit, to take a bath. At the same time, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng received a hint from Yu Qianqiu that Jiuyu was very important to him and that nothing should happen to him. In fact, he was under house arrest. Chapter 1183. Inside the underground karst cave, Xinyu, who was under house arrest, was not afraid at all. Instead, he heaved a sigh of relief. For him, being able to find a secluded place to cultivate in peace was better than anything else. He really didn't want to follow Yu Qianqiu and take risks. In his memory, as long as he followed Yu Qianqiu, there was never a time when he wasn't on tenterhooks. Everything he did was unimaginable and frightening. The underground karst cave was full of twists and turns, and the space was quite large. Yu Qianqiu had said that as long as he didn't leave this place, no one would restrict his freedom. Thus, he turned into the depths of a winding passageway and settled down. He had also thought it through. Since he had nowhere to reason with, he might as well obediently serve Yu Qianqiu. It was nothing more than going in and out of the boundary of heavens a few more times. As long as he did his part, based on his understanding of Yu Qianqiu after being in contact with him for so long, Yu Qianqiu would not do anything to him. Hong Tai Long walked around the huge underground karst cave with his hands clasped behind his back. He had no interest in Yu Qianqiu's trivial matters. Yu Qianqiu was negotiating with Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng when his gaze suddenly stopped on the stone wall of the karst cave opposite the underground river. A beautiful woman in fluttering white clothes was looking at him gently with a faint smile. Cough cough. That's it. Yu Qianqiu said and directly flashed to the opposite entrance of the cave. Bai Suzhen gently held his hand. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then they turned around and entered the cave together. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. The former blew his beard and glared at him. What a guy who only cares about the opposite sex. Inside the cave where Bai Suzhen cultivated, there was a clean long couch. Yu Qianqiu was lying comfortably on it with his head resting on the thigh of a beauty. His eyes were wide open as he looked at Bai Suzhen, who was stroking his face and smiling at him. He asked, "Why did you stop cultivating? Did we disturb you?" Bai Suzhen shook her head and said with a smile, "I couldn't hear your voices even after setting up a soundproof enchantment. I just wanted to take a walk after I finished cultivating and saw you." So that was how it was. By the way, there's something I want to tell you. Yu Qianqiu lay on her lap and told her about what had happened recently, especially about how all the cultivators in the human world had been wiped out. Then he stared at the expression on Bai Suzhen's face without blinking. Bai Suzhen frowned, then nodded slightly and said, "I understand what you mean. When you think it's appropriate, let's go back to my home and move my Snow Fox clan to a safe place." Yu Qianqiu didn't know what to say to this considerate confidant. He raised his hand and grabbed the hand that was caressing his face. A naughty smile suddenly appeared on his face as he said, "I think it's time for our relationship to take another step forward." Take another step forward? Bai Suzhen was startled. For a moment she didn't know what he meant. Yu Qianzhou's finger had already gently touched the bulge of her heart. Then he pressed his entire palm on it. Bai Suzhen immediately understood what he meant. A blush appeared on her face and a hint of shyness flashed through her eyes. Bending her soft waist, she lowered her head and took the initiative to press her lips against Yu Qianzhou's. The warmth of the other party's body and the attractive aura on their lips immediately ignited the lust in their hearts. Seeing that she agreed, Yu Qianzhou's beastly nature instantly erupted. He suddenly flipped over and placed Bai Suzhen on the bed. Bai Suzhen let out a moan. Their mouths couldn't be separated. Their tongues tangled together, and his hands were groping all over Bai Suzhen's body. Just as he pulled open Bai Suzhen's clothes, revealing her snow-white skin, his hand touched her soft and smooth skin. Before he could reach in, he suddenly heard Hong Tailong's loud voice coming from outside. "Yu Qianzhou, where did you go?" This voice was so loud that even the people outside the base could hear it. *CK. Yu Qianzhou suddenly raised his head and looked at the beautiful woman who was panting under him. He threw caution to the wind and said, "*CK. Let's not care about him. Let's get down to business first." Just as he laid down again, Bai Suzhen suddenly couldn't help but burst out laughing. She reached out her hand to support his body and said, "You go do what you need to do first. I can't relax with someone outside. Next time, come and find me. We'll find a quiet place." What she meant was that this time there was no atmosphere. The swan meat that he could finally taste after waiting for such a long time was scared away by someone. Yu Qianzhou instantly jumped up with a face full of grief and indignation. He quickly walked out and his angry roar came from outside. "Hong Tailong, you uncultured thing. I was doing something very important but I was interrupted by a beast like you." Bai Suzhen sat up on the bed and tidied up her messy clothes. When she heard Yu Qianzhou yelling at someone outside, she couldn't help but giggle. She tidied up her hair and walked out. Hong Tailong, who had been scolded to the point that his head was spinning, finally waited for Yu Qianzhou to take a breather. He said with a stunned expression, "What did I interrupt you for?" Just as he finished speaking, his gaze paused on the hole in the stone wall in front of him. He saw a beautiful woman in white standing there and nodding at him as a greeting. That was the place where Yu Qianzhou came out from. Wei Chuanxiu, Yun Peng, and Xin Yu stuck their heads out from 3 different directions and looked in their direction. Hong Tailong instantly realized that he had ruined their plan. He slapped his forehead and said, "So you're just sharpening your axe to cut firewood? I was wrong. I was wrong. You continue with your important business. I'll leave. I promise I won't disturb you anymore." He waved his hand repeatedly to signal Yu Qianzhou to go back, then turned around and left. *CKU. Yu Qianzhou cursed loudly. He wanted nothing more than to go over and give him 2 kicks. The atmosphere was already ruined. What was the use of you leaving? Hong Tailong pretended not to hear anything. He buried his head in a hole and crawled into it. He faced the wall and drew circles with his index finger. He kept mumbling, I was wrong. Right at this moment, Zhang Peng quickly dashed into the karst cave from the outside. He also heard Hong Tailong's shout and knew that his master had returned. It just so happened that he had something to talk to him about. Who knew that he would see his master so angry the moment he arrived? He stood at the entrance of the cave, not knowing what to do or what was going on. Yu Qianzhou glanced at Zhang Peng. He knew that he wouldn't come here for no reason. Therefore he suppressed his anger and temporarily put Hong Tailong's matter aside. He walked over and asked, "What's the matter?" Zhang Peng was stunned. He immediately remembered why he was looking for his master. He quickly replied, "When Rui wanted to look for you a few times but unfortunately he never met you." "When Rui?" Yu Qianzhou paused and frowned. "When Rui from the Wanlanfeng clan?" "Yes." Zhang Ping nodded. Yu Qianzhou asked curiously, "Why is he looking for me?" Let's go take a look." The master and disciple flew out together. In the base's conference room, Yu Qianzhou didn't have to wait long before Zhang Ping brought Wen Rui over. When Wen Rui saw Yu Qianzhou, he quickly bowed and said, "Greetings, torture envoy." "Ah, we're all acquaintances. Take a seat." Yu Qianzhou sat on the seat of honor. He asked curiously, "I heard that you've been looking for me a few times. What's the matter?" When Rui didn't sit. He walked up to him and cupped his hands. "I've been trying to find out something but unfortunately, I haven't been able to find out anything. Therefore I'd like to ask the torture envoy." Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered. He could roughly guess what Wen Rui wanted to ask, but he still wore a faint smile on his face. "Ask away. There's no need to be so reserved." Then I'll be presumptuous. When Rue cupped his hands again and said, "Here's the thing. There are hundreds of cultivators from the One clan. Everyone knows that ancestor Wen Lanfeng has left with you, torture envoy. But this time we didn't even get to see him. Everyone really misses him, so they asked me to ask the torture envoy where our ancestor has gone. Or has something happened to him?" Yu Qianqiu sat up straight and tapped his fingers on the table. "To be honest, I don't know where your ancestor has gone. When I was still in the mystic immortal city, your ancestor found me. He said that he wanted to regain his dignity in front of Lu Yanqing. You should know that your ancestor has deep feelings for Valley Master Lu, so he left to cultivate alone. I've been looking for him often, but unfortunately, I haven't heard from him yet. So, I'm also worried that something might have happened to him. So that's how it is." When Rue bowed, a thoughtful expression on his face. After a while, he looked like he wanted to say something but hesitated. "Speak your mind. I'll definitely help you if I can solve any problems." Yu Qianqiu didn't finish his sentence. He wondered if the One clan didn't have the upper hand in the military competition system, so they wanted to find Wen Lanfeng to support them. If that was the case, he would have to reason with him. Unexpectedly, when Rue hesitated for a while and cupped his hands. "I have a presumptuous request. I hope the torture envoy can agree to it. Tell me what it is first." Yu Qianqiu smiled gently. "Well," when Rue was a little embarrassed. "To tell you the truth, the ancestor is the backbone of the One clan. Hundreds of clansmen want to find the ancestor and have been urging me to do so. I'm wondering, can the torture envoy allow me to go to the immortal realm to inquire about the ancestor?" "You want to leave this place alone?" Yu Qianqiu's smile froze, then he smiled faintly again. "It's not that I don't want to promise you, but the immortal realm is currently in a time where the demonic Tao is running rampant. It's too dangerous for you to go out alone. I'm afraid that once you leave this place you'll most likely die. When Lanfeng is no longer here, so I have to be responsible for your safety." When Rue thought that this would be enough to make the other party retreat, but unexpectedly, when Rue plopped down on his knees and kowtowed, sobbing. When Rue has been entrusted by hundreds of clansmen to find the ancestor. Whether the ancestor is dead or alive, as long as there's news of the ancestor, we'll be at ease. As long as I can inquire about the ancestor's whereabouts, when Rue's insignificant life is nothing. Even if I die, it won't be regretted." Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. Just a moment ago he had hardened his heart and had some killing intent. However, when a man like him knelt down and cried on the spot, he immediately felt apologetic. Thus, he felt pity for him and quickly got up to help him up. "Get up. I understand your difficulties and your feelings. Such loyalty is commendable, how can I refuse you? How about this? Go back and make some preparations. When I leave I'll take you with me. How about that?" You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.